Hello, everyone. Hope you're all doing well. Yesterday was the day of freedom. I don't know
Hmm.
if you know this, Adam.
I feel so free.
Yesterday was the day of freedom. Now the question remains, what is it that we're being free from? Are we being freed from the oppression of these other countries bullying us with their evil trade tariffs, with their
Hmm.
evil trade surpluses while we have trade deficits? Or are we being freed from the bounds of having money in our stock market?
Yeah,
We're
exactly.
That's the $1 million question. Actually, no, that's the $1 billion question. So I guess we're all going to find out together. Let's talk about it. So Trump threw out his tariffs yesterday for the first time. We finally got to see what was going on here. Look, we got a little handsome picture of our handsome president. He's holding the chart. Look how
He's
happy he
so
is.
proud of
He's
himself.
so
This chart,
happy.
though,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, so let's look at this chart real quick. Now, this chart is kind of interesting here. It's got on the left, it's got the country names, and then the second column it says tariffs charged to the USA.
Hmm.
Even then, and then small print under it, it says including currency manipulation and trade barriers. Now that's important because that number is not actually the tariffs that that country charges us. So at the top, you says China 67%. China does not, in fact, have a 67% average tariff on U.S. goods. That number, well, we'll talk about where the number comes from, but that number is including what the Trump administration calls currency manipulation and various trade barriers. Now, trade
Right.
barriers could be something like, say, in China or any country, if the local government, pays its own farmers to build, to grow corn, kind of like we do here, they would consider that a barrier to trade because that's going to make their corn cheaper than U.S. corn, right?
Sure. Yeah.
And then the third column says USA discounted reciprocal tariff. And that is the number in which we are throwing a general all purpose tariff on everything coming from that country. So you can see we got China 34%, the EU 20%, Vietnam 46%, those dang Vietnamese, Taiwan, our good friend Taiwan 32%, Japan, the land of anime, 24%, and the list goes on.
Yeah. Look at this.
So right off
Cambodia,
the
49%.
I know those freaking What's up
The
with Cambodia?
Cambodians,
That's the real thing. What the fuck is going on with Cambodia? Those absolute jerks.
they can't be a
Okay.
giant market. Jeez. So look, aren't we magnanimous? We're doing half of the tariff, but
Yeah.
actually their tariffs are much lower than this. There's a lot being pumped into that, currency manipulation addition add-on, right?
Right,
Is China
right.
tariffing us 34%? I'm not sure that they are.
So according to Grok,
Hmm.
the average the actual average tariff that we get charged from China is, well, I say we, and we'll talk about it in a second, is
Mm.
7.5%.
7.5%. So that
Right.
34 is pretty rich.
That's pretty high. So, and there's another important thing too, is that in that second column it says tariffs charged to the US. This keeps coming up, and it's something that's important to talk about. Countries don't pay tariffs, businesses pay tariffs. So the United States government is not paying a tariff to China, even with that 7%. So
You go ahead.
so for example, if we have a 34% tariff on China, when Chinese goods come to the US, the Chinese government is not paying 34%. The way it works is like, say, you go to Best Buy and you want to buy headphones. If there's a brand of headphones that's made in China, what it means is that when Best Buy bought those, all the pallets of headphones from that Chinese company, when it comes into America, Best Buy, the American company, they pay the 34% tariff. So businesses pay the 34% tariff, and then obviously they're going to pass that cost on to the consumer when you buy that product.
Yeah, it's like a sales tax. It's basically
Right.
just a international sales tax.
Exactly. Exactly. The way so it's going to be, I guess, mostly American businesses would end up, and then American consumers would end up paying the cost. The only way which a foreign business would pay the cost would be if it's something like, say, for example, you go to buy a Toyota, and so you go to your local Toyota dealer. So it's it's not an American company, it's a Japanese company. Now, that would mean that that company, the Toyota, even though it would be the American division, Toyota, the company, they would pay the import tax. So you could say, well, technically a foreign company is paying the tax, but then obviously it's going to be passed on to you if you buy the car. So
It is a tax though. So if as long as the government takes the money in and doesn't spend it, it will shrink the money supply, which could help with inflation. But
that is,
obviously, the price
well,
inflation is going to be in a different
yeah,
direction.
but that's the yeah. It's kind of yeah. You're right, because if they take in the money, don't spend it. Which ha 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 ha. What are the chances of that? Right.
Well, this is what's going to happen. Everyone's going to be like, "Oh, I can't afford anything," so they're going to take out consumer loans, and then the money supply is going to expand on that end of the
Ooh, so you
because
might get the dreaded stagflation again, right?
yeah, I mean,
Yes.
people will buy groceries on their credit card if need be. Push comes to
Mm-hmm.
shove, people are not going to starve. So
Right. Right. So before we get into how these numbers were generated, is there anything initial you have any initial thoughts on the tariffs generally?
no, I mean this is kind of crazy. I was kind of watching the financial news this morning, and everyone is just completely turned on the Trump administration. Everyone thinks this is bonkers. They think the Trump administration has completely blown its credibility because these numbers just seem insane. Like how they
Mm-hmm.
were calculated seems insane. Everyone keeps going back to the old analogy of, yes, I have a deficit with the grocery store, right? Because
Right.
I go spend money there. They get my money and I get their goods, but I don't sell anything to the grocery store. So, but it's a good deficit, right?
Well, we'll talk about that. I was looking at like the various business news, Bloomberg, CNBC, Fox Business. It seemed like when I was perusing Bloomberg and the Wall Street Journal and CNBC, it was like 90% negative in terms
Yeah.
of the view of
Yeah.
the tariffs. Fox News was mixed. There was negativity, but there's
Really?
also a lot of positivity. Yeah,
Wow.
of
Okay. They know
of
Trump is watching.
right, exactly, exactly. So actually, and I didn't think to look at. I'm sure One American News and News Nation or Newsmax, whatever the hell it's called. I'm sure they were very positive on the whole thing.
Are
So
they a publicly traded company? I
I think
don't
one actually is because I remember. Oh my God, which one is it? Because I remember I was watching, Jim Cramer, the Mad Money guy or whatever his show's called, and he was talking about someone called into the show and they're like, "Oh, should we buy like the Newsmax stock?" And he's like, "Well, it's a meme stock, so no." But
News Corp is Fox News, right?
News Corp is Fox News, I believe. Yeah,
Okay. Down with the rest of the market, so.
right. So, but anyway, okay. So my before I get into some of like the data here, my initial thoughts are and I've talked about this before. I'm fine. I support the idea of trying to bring jobs back to America. I do support that idea. I do support the idea of for both to have more workers working these jobs in America, but also I think there is a valid security concern is that, we would like, it would be definitely beneficial if America is producing the high end chips. We don't really want China. We're not going to really trust China if we have to buy chips from China. Who knows what they'll put in them? So I do think there are definitely valid concerns both for the worker and for US security to bring some manufacturing back to stateside. And I do think from a fairness perspective, if you talk about reciprocal tariffs, that also does make sense to me to some capacity. Like if you say, oh, China has a 5% tariff on, American beef, we're going to throw a 5% tariff on some Chinese good or whatever, right? Like I understand the logic there. That does make sense to me. So I'm not opposed to these concepts in theory.
Mhm.
Where I think the problem comes from to me is that, at least on the offset, before we even saw these numbers, is that Trump, and when I was listening to all the Trump administration people were doing lots of interviews today and yesterday about this. And part of what I think my issue with this is that they constantly state three different goals that these tariffs are supposed to accomplish. That the tariffs are supposed to A, raise tax money. Trump has talked about this a lot too. He always talks about like, we used to not have income tax. We just got all our money from tariffs. We're going to raise all the money from tariffs, right? So that's goal one or goal A. Goal B is to bring jobs back to the states. And then goal C is to promote reciprocal fair trade and not to get taken advantage of.
Right. Yeah.
Now, my issue is that those three goals all contradict each other. You
Yeah,
can't
they're all in
actually,
conflict.
they're all in conflict with each other. You can't actually focus on all those goals. And what I mean by that is if the goal is to raise tariff money, then you're just going to have the tariffs be in place forever because you're just going to do that in order to generate money outside of income tax, right?
Yeah.
And that's in conflict with the fair trade. That's in conflict with the fair trade thing because the way the fair trade would work, it would be saying, "Hey, we want fair trade, we want free trade, but we got to make sure that we're not getting ripped off." So if we say to Japan, "Hey, you're putting 5% tariff on, American beef, we're going to put 5% tariff on anime or anime DVDs or whatever, and then Japan says, okay, Mr. President, you win. We're going to drop our tariffs to zero. Well, if it's about free trade, then we would drop our tariffs to zero, right?
Yeah, and then we lose the tax money. So,
But then we would lose the tax money. And then also, that also ties back into bringing jobs back overseas. Because if you, and like the tax money, if you want to bring jobs back to America, then you doesn't matter
you
what,
got to
well, it
keep the
matters,
tariffs
but
on. Yeah,
yeah, you're
exactly.
going to keep the tariffs on. Even if Japan says, well, we're going to get rid of our tariffs, they're going to go to zero. In America, you're going to have to keep your tariffs up because the whole point is you have to make it more expensive to have the job exist in Japan or China and then ship it to America. And that only can happen if you have the high tariff in the first place
Right.
or a massive subsidy. So that's why my issue at the offset was just I think you have to like pick a goal and then you aim towards that goal. I don't think you can do all three of these at the same time.
Right. Yeah. China subsidizes a lot of the businesses. So
Yes.
that's
Yes.
how they're able to get their prices cheaper. So they
Right.
work it on their end other than making our products more expensive, which they do. They obviously have tariffs too. So I guess they're squeezing us at both sides. But we
Right.
have to pick one, right?
Right. And the one other thing too is that I think if the goal is to bring jobs back to America, there needs to be a lot of certainty for these companies. Like if you're Apple, because I know some of these companies have, they promised to invest billions of dollars in America, right? But I say promise in finger quotes because I'll believe it when I see it. Because if you want Apple or Samsung or whoever to build a factory in America, they talk about how these factories are going to take 3 to 5 years to build and they're going to cost billions of dollars. And it's only going to make sense to do that if the tariff is so freaking high that it makes sense for them to spend that time and money and effort in America to build this factory. And so if you want that certainty, I think you need to be very clear that that's the point of the tariff, that it's not about being reciprocal, that it's about, bringing trade back, bringing these jobs back to America. And I think you need to have these tariffs be enshrined in law as opposed to an executive order. Because if it's an executive order, all that means is that the next president could come in and just wipe the whole thing away. Or Congress could, they need a veto proof majority, but they could vote the whole thing off, which is what they're trying to do with some of the tariffs already.
Yeah, businesses want stability, obviously. So
Right.
this doesn't breed a lot of stability, right?
Right.
You just built your factory all the way over here and then the tariff is gone.
Yeah, you just wasted all that money. Right. That's why, I could be, listen, I could be very cynical. I could be very pessimistic. I think that these companies that are so far promising to spend billions of dollars in America, like
Are
if
going
I
to
was running
back
those
out.
companies,
Yeah.
yeah, if I was running those companies, what I'd do, I'd be like, oh yeah, Mr. President, we're gonna spend billions of dollars, we're gonna do all this stuff, right? I would instead, I just like, you get a couple $1 million, a few $1 million, you buy a plot of land, you spend a few more $1 million, you start building like the outside of like a factory very slowly over the next 3 to 5 years because you're like, well, let's see, maybe Trump will back off on it. Maybe he won't be president in 4 years, right? Are you really going to like invest the massive amount of capital required? I don't know. I think probably not.
You just lay a slab of concrete and paint something for the Google satellite to see.
Yes. Hey, this is what, this is literally what China does. They have all those fake
They
cities,
do.
right?
They do. Yeah,
Right.
look.
They're going to hire the Chinese fake city guys to come out to America and build fake factories. So,
That's so the Chinese can invest in real estate.
yes. Yeah.
Oh, so stupid.
Okay, so this is kind of a funny tweet. If you scroll down to the next page, we have Matt Gates. Look at that, our good friend Matt Gates. Where's he been? He has this tweet. He says, "Who the fuck does Madagascar think they are?" You can see Madagascar, according to this chart, has a 93% tariff to America. Madagascar, okay? That nice land with all the lemurs and the animals. How dare they?
I see he's been community noted. What's that have to do with
He
it?
has been community noted, and we'll talk about that in a second. So if you scroll down, now this chart someone threw up, I saw it was kind of passing around on X, and various people fact checked it on Grok. I'm going to say Elon Musk said is true then. But so shows the on the left, it shows the tariffs charged to the US that was claimed by the chart. And on the right, Grok calculated what was the average tariff amount. And so you can see there's a very large discrepancy. China 67%, average is only 7.5%. EU says 39%, average is only 5%. Vietnam is 92% according to the chart, but according to Grok, it's only 9.5% tariff, and so on. So it shows us a very large discrepancy between the two numbers. So you might say, where did these numbers come from? Okay.
Yeah, that's the question. I mean, people have said, and I've heard, but like, why they did that, how they calculated these numbers, why they used that methodology.
They did that.
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
Why they do that? Why they do that?
Well, look, I'm hoping you're going to explain it in a way that actually makes some sort of logical sense.
I'm going to explain it to you, okay? Strap in. So if you go down the next page, you'll see this is how they calculated it. Actually, what they did, they actually didn't do what I think we all assumed they would do, which would just be to copy whatever the tariff amount was. Because as I said, there's other barriers to trade besides tariff. There's governments subsidizing their own goods. There's also, there's currency manipulation. There's all these things. So they didn't actually calculate with the tariff number whatsoever. What they did was they took the trade deficit. Now, the trade deficit is if we give it's basically whatever we import from another country.
Yeah, so we sell goods to them, they sell goods to us. If they sell more goods to us, then we perceive that as we're in deficit to them. Right.
I'm trying to do a very simple number. So it's like, okay, so theoretically, if we sell 10 hot dogs to Europe, okay, but we import 100 hot dogs or 100 chicken wings back from Europe, you would say, oh, well, we have a $90 trade deficit or a 90 unit trade deficit because we import 90 more things than we export. So that's what a trade deficit is.
We give them $100, they give us $10.
Right.
Exactly. For our goods and services.
Yes. We sell significantly less
money. Yeah. And we end up with more stuff.
Yes. We buy more things from Europe than they buy from the EU than the EU buys from us.
So if we're buying supplies to build houses, we end up with the houses.
Right.
And they end up with the paper.
They end up with So when we'll talk about that. So basically we get more physical items from these countries that have deficits, but they get more of our paper money, which are IOUs essentially.
Right. Which can be bad if they use that paper money to come back and buy those assets and rent them out to us, right?
Right.
They build all those houses in the United States that we are on our land, but
and then they rent them for themselves. Right.
Yes.
Or buy them and then rent them out to us. Yes. So it's not all good. But so anyway, so the way this was calculated is we took the Trump administration took the trade deficit of goods with the EU. You can see it's $235 billion. Then they divided that number by the total imports overall from the EU. So the total imports that we get from the EU every year is $600 billion. So they divide that by the trade deficit and they get this percentage, which rounds out to 39%. And then because the Trump administration is so kind, they divide that in half, and there you go. That's the tariff number.
So first of all, this makes absolutely no sense. So they want to get us in an even trade with everyone. Like we need to sell more to Cambodia.
Well, that's part of the problem with this whole thought process is you're correct. It would be literally impossible for us to have even trade with every country.
What the fuck do I want us? Who wants us? What is Cambodia? Are we going to go to Cambodia and say, hey, what do you guys need? We're going to make it for you.
I mean, what does Cambodia export?
I have no idea. That's why I'm wondering how there's a 90% tariff. Whatever it is, they definitely want some sort of protectionism on them.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what that big product is that they're exporting.
It
So
says they export textiles.
textiles. Okay.
You want some Cambodian textiles.
Right. Okay.
So so that's how this number came to be. If you scroll down, I think this is the first X account. It may be the first person that figured out how this was calculated. They posted this, or at least one of the first people. I think I figured out at least a chunk of the math. It's trade deficit divided by their exports. And they kind of go through it. And if you scroll down to the next one, you actually have James Surowiecki, who I believe is the Wisdom of Crowds author, right?
So look, this is just basically they've set up a fraction.
Yes.
So it could be 1/4 and it would come out as 25%. So
Yeah,
I don't understand how that turns into, and then you divide that by 2 and that's the tariff. What the fuck?
you don't know where the two comes from, or you don't know why even divide it by anything. Why do you even use any of these numbers?
Using that percentage, I don't like, okay, now we're going to charge you that much in addition. How is that going to, these are completely disconnected figures. We've got to, so we need to up how much we sell to Cambodia by 75%, right? So,
or Cambodia has to sell us much less things.
okay, let's make it 80% just so we can divide it easily. So we have to up our game. We have an 80% deficit to overcome in products and services for Cambodia. So when Cambodia sells us stuff, we're going to charge them 40%. Those two numbers are completely disconnected. So we're going to hike up the price of the goods and services that they're selling us by 40%. How's that make any sense, Sitch?
Well,
how does that make any sense at all?
So the way that this happens, like with Cambodia, for example, is because Cambodia, we buy a bunch of shit from Cambodia. We buy their textiles, right? We buy a bunch of, we buy a lot of cheap clothing, a lot of cheap shoes. We buy all this stuff from Cambodia. But the problem is Cambodia is a very poor country. So the kinds of goods that we export are a lot of technology goods. We export planes, high-end technology, kind of expensive things. I mean, we export food, but we also export a lot of high-end technology stuff. Cambodia is too poor to buy a lot of the things that we sell. And so that's what creates or can create a massive trade deficit between our countries, or a trade imbalance between the two countries. We're buying Cambodia's cheap clothing and shoes. They literally can't afford to buy our shit. So the only way to fix that would be either we massively sell Cambodia our shit at a discount, which would be stupid and kind of defeat the whole purpose, or we just stop buying our clothing and shoes from Cambodia, which seems to be what the Trump administration wants.
Well, I think it's a bit different than that. We probably sell them like raw materials, like fabric, and they turn that fabric into clothes. So we're selling them lower end merchandise, and they're adding value by turning it into textiles.
Right.
So if we're going to up the price of the fabric that we're selling them, then that's going to come back in higher prices for the goods and services that they create. Correct?
Correct.
Yeah. So I want you to look at this complete disconnect, right? We're 80% in the hole with Cambodia. These are fictitious numbers we're using here, right?
Well, you shouldn't say in the hole, because that makes it.
Well, no, first of all, this concept is ridiculous, right? The idea that everything is great when they're producing the exact same amount that we're producing and selling to one another, right? So it's like that, then we're dead even, right? They sell us $200 billion worth of stuff, and we sell them $200 billion of stuff, right? Right now, we're super low. We don't sell them enough stuff. We need to get on our game and sell them more stuff. Like, how is raising the price of the merchandise by half of the imbalance in stuff? How's that even? They're completely disconnected things.
Yes.
They're fucking, that's like, all morning I've been looking at this going, who the fuck came up with this and why?
So I looked it up. According to Google's AI, which could be lying, it says that the main three imports that we get from Cambodia are semiconductor devices. It's interesting. Then it's trunks and cases, and then it's knit sweaters. So
Yeah,
those are the
see,
main
we're
three.
sending them yarn and or they may be getting yarn from somewhere else. Like it's a
And then
global economy, right? They're buying yarn from fucking some other country.
so it says we get $2.47 billion of semiconductors from Cambodia, $1.6 billion worth of trunks and cases, and $800 million of knit sweaters. And then in what we give them about $61 million worth of cars, or I shouldn't say give, we sell them $61 million worth of cars. We sell them $23 million worth of starch residue. I don't know what that is. And we sell them $16 million worth of raw fur skins.
We're drifting into planned economy territory here. We really are.
Right.
That's why planned economies fail, because nobody has enough compute power to figure out who's buying yarn from who, right?
Right. Right.
So just but this is crazy. This is fucking crazy. This chart, this whole ordeal, bonkers.
Well, I wonder. I I think part of the problem is, and I was going to talk about this later, but I guess we'll talk about it now because you're bringing it up, is the way in which money works. That's not based on anything. So our money is fiat. It's not based on anything. Like
Yeah,
it's not based on
it's based
tangible.
on debt. It is
It's based on debt.
people have
But I
to make
mean,
a promise that they're going to pay it back, either the US government or the person that takes the loan out. So
right.
it
But I
is
mean, it's
based
not
on
based. Well, when I say anything, I mean it's not based on a physical product. It's not based
resource.
on
No.
gold. It's not
Yeah.
based on gold, right?
But your
That's a
promise is worth more than gold, Sitch. Come on, let's
thank
be
you.
honest
I
here.
appreciate it, Adam. Okay.
Yeah, see?
Now yours, I'd say like silver. I don't know if I'd say
That's bad.
just kidding. But no, so the way that like us humans have to conceptualize fiat currency being based on promises and IOUs and all this stuff, it's very counterintuitive and bizarre.
Of
And
course it is. Yeah.
it's very hard for us to like conceptualize it. It's very easy for us to conceptualize money that's based off of gold or some other physical item because it's just one to one. I have a $1 bill that's worth $1 worth of gold. Simple. I think
Yeah.
the problem is that when you have money that's backed on gold, these trade imbalances actually make sense to be something that are more concerning. Because what happens if it's based on gold is that you're literally giving your gold supplies to another country. And if you do that, it means that your country can't issue currency and your
Right.
economy shrinks. And
Yep.
so in that world, then yes, the gold, the gold's, on the gold standard, you need to really be careful about all these trade imbalances and all this other stuff. In our world right now, where that's not the case, and the US dollar is the currency that most countries in the entire world want to use, we don't have that concern anymore.
Right.
And so that's where I think part of the disconnect comes from.
Yeah. Yeah. No, people don't get currency. They don't understand. They
Right.
don't understand monetary policy or any of that stuff. So, but evidently Trump doesn't either. So,
So okay, so we'll see. We'll see if we can figure out where this number came from. So we scroll down, we got James Surowiecki. He's the Wisdom of Crowds guy. He also, at the same time, or maybe just copied, he kind of talks about how this kind of weird number was calculated, and he seems to be very unhappy with how this number was calculated. And if you scroll down, he says, after that, he says, it's worse than I thought in calculating the tariff rate. Trump's people only use the trade deficit in goods. So even though we run a trade surplus in services with the world, those exports don't count as far as Trump is concerned.
oh, like financial planning and shit like that.
Right, right.
Financial services.
Yes.
Wow.
And then on top of that, there's another thing too, which is a little unusual or interesting, which is that we have trade surpluses with some countries. One of those countries is the Netherlands. One of those countries is Australia. And even though we have trade surpluses, so that should mean that we have zero tariffs on these countries, we have a 10% tariff. And so what they did was they just gave a flat 10% to everyone, even if we have a surplus. And when I was listening to the Trump administration
Why?
people talk about this because they'd be asked these questions on the business news channels, I don't know, they gave kind of various answers, but they couldn't really seem to focus on one specific thing. So maybe it was because they were mad that Australia wasn't taking US meat, which is a whole nother issue in the first place, or maybe they just thought it was going to bring jobs back, though I'm personally skeptical that a 10% tariff is a high enough tariff to get Apple to build phones in America, considering the fact that, they like if you built a phone factory in America versus in China, the difference in pay for employees would be like thousands percent higher than what they're paying them in China in America. So I'm very skeptical that the 10% would be enough to just necessitate building a factory here.
My read is that they just did this because people were giving them guff about the tariffs not being targeted enough. So they just did all this to make it appear that they are actually doing something that's like surgical precision.
Oh,
But
you mean like having all the different numbers?
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Though it would be the opposite if you said, okay, well, you just came up with a formula, like a general formula, and applied it to every country. That would be the opposite of surgical.
Of course.
Right?
Of course. Yeah.
So if you scroll,
but most people will not even understand this formula or what's going on here. So,
right. So if you scroll down, we have someone from the White House press secretary's office who is criticizing the Wisdom of Crowds author, saying, no, we literally calculated tariffs and non-tariffs barriers. And they pasted this picture, and this picture is from a document, and you see they have some mathematical algebraic formula that's got your Latin symbols or your Greek symbols in it.
My God. Right? What the fuck?
Right. So, but then it's interesting because then if you scroll down, Nate Silver replied to this, and he said, the White House is basically woke now. This is like every dumbass academic paper where they make the same, some incredibly stupid claim, but cover it up by using Greek symbols. Because essentially what that math formula is with the Greek symbols is exactly the formula that James and everyone else has been saying. It's that formula, just with Greek symbols. Yeah.
Really?
So people were making fun of this guy for pushing back on this. So, okay. So now we understand what the formula is. We have this question, how did this come to? Who came up with this idea, right? So there seems to be two theories that I've heard. So one theory this is the first person I think I saw kind of promote it on X. He says, this might be the first large-scale application of AI technology to geopolitics. ChatGPT 4.0, O3 High, Gemini 2.50, Claude 3.7, and Grok all give the same answer to the question on how to impose tariffs easily. So this guy asked AI how to impose broad tariffs, quote, reciprocally or fairly, and they all gave, according to him, and other people checked, said they got the same answer. They all gave this formula. They all gave this formula. So he's claiming that he thinks that it was a ChatGPT created idea. Was this tariff situation?
My God. This is fucking insane.
And so it's interesting. He also, it's interesting. This guy's not against using ChatGPT. He just thinks that the prompts they gave were bad because it doesn't make sense to do it this way. And he actually, right under it, you can see he actually asked them, he said, is doing it this way, this kind of formula, is this from some kind of academic paper? Because I did see on CNBC, people were saying that this isn't from anything. No economist has come up with this idea. If someone knows, send it to me, because I didn't find it either. But this guy asked ChatGPT, and they said, actually, kind of interestingly, ChatGPT claims that there was a memo that Peter Navarro wrote for Trump in 2017 that maybe suggested something like this. So it's possible it came from ChatGPT, possible it came from Peter Navarro in 2017. Now, obviously, the Trump administration, to my knowledge so far, has not said that they got this formula from ChatGPT. Right?
Oh, like they would. Can you imagine how fucking embarrassing is that?
Yes. So if you scroll down, we have a Charlie Kirk post, and he says, President Trump's tariffs aren't random. They are detailed and thought out. The U.S. Trade Representative has produced a 400-page report chronicling every single tariff and trade restriction imposed on America everywhere in the world. If a country doesn't like today's announcement, then they have an easy fix. Get rid of the restrictions on U.S. imports, equalize the playing field. It's worth reading. And he links it. Okay. So if you scroll down, they have the picture of it. Now, obviously, it's 400 pages. Okay. I didn't read 400 pages of information this morning. I did look through it.
This is going to be the driest fucking reading.
Yeah, exactly. I did look through it because I was curious. I was like, oh, okay, well, maybe there is a report. And they did. And I also heard people on the Trump administration promote this report and say that, oh, we have all these experts that come up with these numbers. Whenever someone asks them, they said, where do these numbers come from? They say, we have all these experts and they came up with this report and they came up with this number. So I said, oh, okay. I'm assuming they're talking about this report because it's the one Charlie Kirk is promoting. And so I kind of looked through this report. Now, if you look through the table of contents, you see you have the foreword and then you just have a bunch of country names. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have the appendix. So if you look at this report, and you guys can look at it for yourself if you find Charlie Kirk's timeline, what it does, and it actually does it pretty extensively, is it goes through every country and explains all the various barriers to trade beyond just whatever the stated tariff is. And it says like, oh, in Algeria, these are the barriers to trade. In Canada, these are the barriers to trade. And they actually do a pretty extensive job doing all that. So I was like, oh, wow, okay. This is actually pretty great information that explains all the various barriers to trade. However, what I didn't find in there was this formula. Nowhere in this document could I find this formula or them even suggesting a solution to these barriers to trade. They're suggesting a sort of universal formula you could apply to every country.
Right. Okay.
So the answer is, I guess we don't really know yet where this formula came from. So far we have a paper that doesn't actually have that formula, and we have ChatGPT, which I hope is not where the answer of this formula came from.
Just your, like, I guess your gut intuition on the formula. Like, if going back to our previous example of the trade imbalance of whatever our hypothetical trade imbalance with Cambodia, where we're down in the whole 80%, we got to sell them more goods. Like, there's two ways to deal with that trade imbalance, right? We sell them more stuff, right, or they sell us less stuff, right?
Right.
That in itself is just a complicated issue, right?
Yes.
Like, who knows why they're not buying our stuff? Maybe they're a bunch of fucking tight asses that only work and save their money. They don't have any sort of consumer economy, right? They're not willing to go into debt to go to the fucking movies, to get a private taxi for their burrito, okay?
Right.
Like, that's
right.
So we're going to, so if, like, they're not buying no matter what, like, we got nothing we can sell them, so we're going to stop buying stuff from them. Well, what if it's stuff we fucking need? Like, we need so the complexity of this problem is immense. So, and to basically with a tariff, you're trying to add friction. You're trying to make people less likely to sell to us. Well, look, I don't know why. How would there be any incentive? Because they're obviously going to hit us back with the tariff, right? What is our incentive to sell to them at some wildly taxed sale to their government, right? Because we're getting taxed as we're selling stuff to them. So obviously we're going to be less incentivized to sell to them. It seems like the only incentive would be for them to sell to us less.
Right.
How is half of the trade imbalance the right number for friction, right? Because it's like there's an 80% trade imbalance. We're going to charge them 40%. Like, how is that the right number for friction?
I don't know.
Yeah, it makes absolutely no fucking sense.
Well, there's a tweet I meant to include in the Word document, but I'll just read it because I didn't. It's kind of what you're talking about, but with a different country's example. So they say, to illustrate how nonsensical these tariffs were calculated, take the example of Lesotho, one of the poorest countries in Africa, with just $2.4 billion in annual GDP, which is being struck with a 50% tariff rate under the Trump plan, one of the highest rates, or it is the highest rate among all countries on the list. Why does Lesotho apply extortionate tariffs on the U.S. products, and the U.S. is merely being reciprocal? It says it actually doesn't. Lesotho is part of the South African Customs Union and applies the same external tariff structure as everyone in the bloc. This includes countries like South Africa, Namibia, Estonia, and Botswana. But if you look at those countries' tariff, they're significantly less. South Africa has a 30% tariff, Namibia has a 21% tariff, Botswana 37% tariff. And it says, so why is Lesotho has such a high tariff? And it's because it's not based on tariffs. It's based on trade deficit. Okay. So if you look at Lesotho specifically, it says every year the United States imports $236 million of goods from Lesotho, primarily diamonds, textiles, and apparel, while we only export about $7 million worth of goods back to Lesotho. So that means that we buy $236 million of diamonds and clothing from this country, and they only buy $7 million worth of goods from us. And it says, well, why do we export so little to them? It's because this country is extremely poor. 56% of the population lives on less than $3.65 a day and only $1,300 a year. They simply can't afford to buy U.S. products.
Yeah, they're not buying a fucking Tesla. Look,
right.
They're mining diamonds out of the ground and selling them and using them to buy fucking grain to eat.
Right. And so this breeds the question that you were talking about. What is Lesotho supposed to do to fix this trade imbalance? How can they possibly fix the trade imbalance except to just not sell us stuff? They just stop selling us diamonds or whatever.
Well, look, the diamond importers are going to still want the diamonds, right? So they're going to eat it and pay the tariff. Or try to find diamonds somewhere else, and then those people are going to be fucked because they're going to be like, oh, look, they got no tariff over there, so they're buying their diamonds instead.
Well, I don't know what the diamond market is. I don't
have
know
no
if we have diamonds
either.
in America. I don't know if we have a lot of diamonds in America, so we're going to have to get them from somewhere, right?
Yes, I don't know what the diamond market is. So, and this is why I said we're encroaching on planned economy territory because like now we have to understand the entire diamond market of the world to appropriately put some sort of logical tariff on these people, right?
Right.
You can't fucking do it.
And it's interesting because I never thought about it in the terms you're talking about, that this is very like socialist planned economy, not in terms of outcome, but in terms of thought process. Because
well, it is basically random because it's just, I'm assuming that the trade deficit comes into being from, forces on the ground.
A conflux of like numerous forces, which were outlined in that report.
Right.
Or some of them were outlined in that report, yes.
But then to take that trade deficit and do this weird thing, which is a complete non sequitur, like I said, you're just basically saying, well, let's just take whatever the trade deficit is and cut it in half and say that that's it. I mean, it would be kind of like, just, I don't know, coming up with somebody's salary based on what day of the year they were born on. It's like, what?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What does that have to do with anything?
Right.
What? These two things are completely disconnected.
It's not that disconnected. Like I don't know the exact example because like the thought, it's just that they're operating on a faulty thought process. They're operating on the thought process that a trade deficit is automatically a bad thing. It can be, but it's not automatically a bad thing. In a lot of cases, it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's not a bad thing that we have a trade deficit with Lesotho, who can never, ever, because we're such a rich country and because our population is significantly higher than a lot of these other countries, it would be very impossible for them to ever have a balanced trade with us. We're always going to be buying more shit than them. So that's not a bad thing, right? On its face. You can't get diamonds in America, right?
Yeah. I can't make the jump to there's nothing logical about this. There's absolutely nothing logical about this.
Well, no, there's
saying,
a logic there. It's just it's not a good logic, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, but the only thing that you could say has some principle behind it is they're saying that the larger the trade imbalance, the higher the tariff should be. So therefore,
that's what they're saying.
The higher the friction.
They want all trade to be balanced, is what the thought process would be. They want all trade to be balanced.
That's a bridge too far for me anyway. Yeah. But then what is a world where all trade is balanced? Like, how is that? What is the advantage of that?
Well, I don't know if there's an advantage. I don't think it's physically possible. Usually you have countries specialize in certain things, either because they have a natural resource that your country doesn't have, or it's just more efficient for various countries to specialize in specific things. Like, for example, our largest trade surplus, I didn't realize this, our largest trade surplus in any country is the Netherlands. We have a
Right.
$50 billion surplus with them. And I was like, well, why? Why the fuck is that? Well, the reason for that is because the Netherlands has a massive industry in refining oil and natural gas. And when we
Okay. Oh
started,
my God.
and when we sanctioned the shit out of Russia, they're like, oh, well, we can't refine Russian. Like we had this whole industry that was refining, oil and natural gas from Russia. We can't do that anymore. So we have to get our oil and natural gas from America. So we sell shit tons of natural gas and oil to the
Crude.
Netherlands
Yeah.
and they
And they
refine it.
refine it
Right.
and
And they
sell
either sell
gasoline.
back or they
Yeah.
sell it to people in Europe or whatever. And we actually buy $50 billion less stuff back from the Netherlands than they buy from us. So should the Netherlands punish America because we don't buy as much of their shit as they buy of our oil?
Yeah, this
No.
is so weird because just when you think of it in terms of third parties, so we sell a massive amount of crude to them, right? But they're turning around and selling the refined gasoline to us and everyone else.
Right.
So it's like they don't have a trade. They probably don't have a trade deficit with everyone.
No.
Dude,
No, it's just because they're buying the resource from us. So.
we I guess this is what bugs Trump is that we have a trade deficit with everyone because we are a rich country and we're out there we're fucking buying shit up from everyone.
But that
We're
makes
buying
sense.
it all up.
Then this is where it's somewhat counterintuitive. The fact that America is the richest country and has a large population means that on average, it's probably going to have a trade deficit with most countries because it has the money to buy more shit than the other
Right.
countries have to buy back from them, and it has more citizens because we're
Yeah.
a larger country. That's why, like, except in specific scenarios where something like the Netherlands, where we're selling them all as oil or these other things, it makes sense that there's going to be a trade surplus just because there's so many more people, or a trade deficit in America because there's so many more people
And
buying so many more things.
and we have a completely consumer driven culture,
Economy,
which
right,
I just most of these places don't have any sort of consumer driven culture. So
right, right,
they want to work and save, work and save, work and save.
right,
So if you don't have that kind of culture, then people aren't like they're not spending their own money. They aren't.
right. And then another example is Australia, which is kind of interesting because they got a 10% tariff like Netherlands. And we have like a 17 or $18 billion surplus with them. So it means Australia buys 17, $18 billion more of our goods than we buy of their goods, which is kind of weird because Australia is a significantly smaller population country. So I was like, why is that? Well, the reason is they buy a lot of high tech, high end technology and transportation from us. They buy airplanes from America. They buy medical, X-ray machines and medical equipment and things from America. So they buy a lot of like very expensive things from America. But we don't really need to buy a lot of shit from Australia because what do they got besides kangaroo burgers? So should Australia punish America because they need to buy the airplanes that we make or the X-ray machines that we make? No, I don't think so. That's just the way
Yeah.
it is. There's nothing wrong with that inherently.
Yeah, it's totally ridiculous.
So,
And if we slap a big old tariff on them, I mean, they can just buy those planes from Europe or buy those planes from someone else.
right. And that's already, so already what's happening is all the countries are kind of looking to make trade deals with each other. There's South Korea and Japan are, maybe going to try to make trade deals with China, which obviously would kind of go against the global policies we want. A lot of other countries, Canada, Mexico, and other countries are talking about making more trade deals with the EU. America's response to this, which there's some truth to, is, well, we're still the largest consumer of shit. So at the end of the day, you have to deal with us, which is true to an extent. But we'll see how this all plays out, I guess.
Yeah, it's weird. It's totally weird. I have no faith in any of this stuff, but I guess we'll see how it plays out.
Mm-hmm.
I think, I don't know. Maybe they'll, it's just so weird. I'm looking at this picture of Bassett grinning like a fucking idiot.
Well, we'll watch some clips. We'll watch some clips of Trump administration people talking to the various news organizations because it's kind of interesting. So.
Yeah. They believe it. They're believers. But look, they're all businessmen. They're all looking for markets. They're like, look, we want to sell in China. I make cars. I want to sell cars in China. I want to make more money. I need more profits. We need to sell twice as many cars.
Well, one of the interesting things about this is what I said before is that this is this like, and you do, whether it succeeds or fails, you got to give Trump credit for being bold, I guess, because he like, if this works somehow, if this all works out, then he's going to be getting the biggest ticker tape parade of all time, massively told you so. But if it fails, there's no one for him to blame. It's 100% on his head. He can't blame Biden. He can't blame Treasury secretaries because he's been pushing tariffs forever. So
if he gets other nations to dump their tariffs, to cut their tariffs on our business people, then that's a good thing.
Right.
But then we have to dump our tariffs. So, and he just seems married to wanting tariffs. So,
well, that's the $1 million question is this just because, he talks about bringing jobs back to, I forget who it was. Someone had speculated. They're like, why is he's talking about these various goals that contradict each other about bringing jobs back, but then also trying to get them to drop their tariffs. Maybe the plan is to throw this out there and just see whichever one he can get. And then he'll claim victory on that.
He's going to be fielding phone calls, though, from a lot of these people. Like, obviously, the diamond retailers are going to be calling him up going, what the fuck? Why are you this is a tax on us.
Right.
I thought we were doing tax cuts. Here you are.
Well,
hurt my business.
What Trump could do, and he could definitely score this as a win, and we'll see if he does it, it would be, because I think the most likely scenario would be a lot of these countries would agree to drop their tariffs to zero. And if Trump then agrees to drop, even though it kind of goes against bringing jobs back, depending on the country, if he agrees to drop our tariffs to zero, that would be, he definitely push that as a big win. And it definitely would be a big win in those countries.
And it would signal for other people that we're reasonable.
Right.
So,
right.
But if we have a trade surplus and we're still charging them a 10% tariff, how does that scream reasonable? We should be giving them 10%.
Right. That's what I'm saying. That's where the problem arises when the countries agree to drop their tariffs to zero. And if Trump still is like, no, I'm married to a flat 10% tariff or something else, then I think that would be self-defeating, because then you're going to kind of create a situation where the countries aren't going to want to work with you.
He basically wants to charge a 10% sales tax to have availability to the American market. That's what he's saying. He's like, if you want to sell in America, it's going to cost you 10% to us, the government.
Yeah, but so is the goal just to say, okay, no matter what you do, even if you drop your tariffs to zero, I'm going to have a flat 10%, period. Because our country's going to put up with that? Are they going to say, fuck you, we're going to charge you 10%? And then Trump's going to say, well, I'm going to charge you 20%. And then we're just continually off for the races.
Yeah.
So I guess we'll find out. But
I mean, they'll be getting feedback from plenty of people in the business community saying, oh, this is killing me. And I think that's going to have an effect, if not on Trump, on people around him. Mm-hmm. And I do think Trump is susceptible to, people seem to get into his ear. So as the business community feels the fallout of this, they will adjust. Now,
I haven't heard anyone say this. I'm sure someone else said this. I haven't heard anyone say that because I just thought of it just now. And I'd be curious. It feels like something Scott Adams would say.
Oh, no.
Okay. Here's my prediction. I haven't listened to Scott Adams today. I don't know what the argument was, but this feels like a Scott Adams theory. The theory would be that the reason that there was this like very general calculation formula that doesn't actually make sense, that it produces these very high numbers, is just to psychologically shock these countries into doing whatever you want. So that's why you wouldn't actually spend the time, all the time required to go through all these countries individually and figure all that out. Like, none of that matters. You're just trying to shock them essentially into bullying them into doing what you want.
Yeah.
And then and then you'll drop the tariffs anyway. So it doesn't matter. And that's why he just came up with this wacky way of coming up with these numbers.
Well, that's good. I mean, that's fine.
That would be my most charitable, generous like way in which I could possibly conceive what was going on here. So I guess we'll find out in the coming days if they, if they get dropped or whatever happens. But
look, if someone in the Trump administration whispered in my ear and said, "Oh, it doesn't matter. It's all bullshit, Adam. Like, we're just throwing it out there to scare people," I'd be like, "Okay, well, that is smart. That is smart." None of the smart people are gonna like. This is not gonna fool any of the smart people, obviously. So.
Okay, so here, let's watch some of this.
Oh, actually, I gotta hold on 1 second. I think there might be a package I gotta sign for.
Oh,
but go ahead, play it.
Okay.
Let me put it up here.
Oh.
Yeah, what's that?
What's going on? I'll put it back in the watch together.
We're gonna have the baseline tariffs.
It's up.
There? Okay.
Yeah.
Baseline tariffs come into effect first, then there are reciprocal tariffs, a little bit more of a different rate for each individual trading partner. Are you preparing to negotiate with some of these trading partners before that tariff rate comes into effect on April 9th?
Well, I think there have been a lot of discussions, but I think we're just going to have to wait and see what would happen. What I would say, Anne-Marie, is I would advise none of the countries to panic. I wouldn't try to retaliate, because as long as you don't retaliate, this is the high end of the number. And I think the market could have certainty that this is the number barring retaliation. So we've got a ceiling, and then we can see if there's a different floor.
So
this is the big issue with the certainty that they're talking about is, the reason the markets will go up and down and kind of go all over the place is because of the uncertainty, because no one really knows, are these tariffs going to come in effect on April 9th? Are they going to be renegotiated down to something less? That's going to make everyone kind of spooked and more likely to not want to invest, because they're going to want to wait and see what's going on. So that's why he's trying to push this idea. Like, this is the ceiling. This is the ceiling. Don't reciprocate or don't retaliate, which, I mean, I don't know. We'll see what other countries do, but welcome back.
Sound like you're ready for negotiation with a number of these partners. Has the European Union, has China, has India, have these countries reached out?
Well, they've all reached out, but it's going to be up to President Trump to see what he wants to do. I think the mindset might be to let things settle for a while. Their tariffs or non-tariff barriers have been on a long time, so we'll see where it goes from here.
When it comes to China,
do you think that's a good strategy or a bad strategy? This would be like, let him sweat it out strategy, right?
Yeah, I mean, who knows? Who knows if it's a good strategy or not?
I guess we'll see.
It does sound like he's basically saying, "Yeah, we kind of like these tariffs now."
Yeah, it could be we're just gonna sit back, or it could be the sweat it out. We're gonna make you feel pain for a month. I mean, it doesn't really make sense, because it's not gonna make them feel pain. It's gonna make us feel pain. So I'm not sure if that's an effective. I'm not sure they'll make you sweat it out strategy works if you're the one sweating it.
American companies.
Yeah, and American consumers.
Yeah.
So, like, I feel like he's playing it exactly backwards, because I feel like what you'd want to do is you throw out the super high tariff, and then before they actually come into effect, you use the fear to negotiate before Americans feel any pain. And then you claim the art of the deal victory.
I heard somebody was talking about how soybean farmers used to sell a lot of soybeans in China. And when Trump came into office the first time, he started playing
American soybean farmers?
Yeah, American soybean farmers, yeah. They'd export a shitload of
to China? I thought it comes from China and Japan. What the fuck?
No, they were selling like crazy to China.
Okay.
China they can't even grow enough soybeans. They're such fucking soy.
They're so soy, they can't get enough of it.
Yeah, exactly. Look, they put fucking soybeans in everything, right? That's like a staple of Chinese food. Of course. Look, all the world, they're like, everyone grows soybeans. Give them to us. Give them to us.
Right.
So, but then the tariffs came, and China's like, oh, fuck that. We'll buy soybeans from some other place. Who knows where they went to.
Right.
So they set up a deal with some other place. That other place started growing soybeans. You know, the farmers are like, oh, Chinese are buying soybeans. So more of us will grow soybeans. And by the time the tariffs were done, like they weren't coming back to America. They're like, we don't need your soybeans. We already got it worked out. Fuck you.
Right.
And all those soybean farmers are still like, oh man,
Salty.
we had it so good. We cornered the Chinese soybean market.
Right.
So this is the thing when you're saying, well, let them sweat it out for a couple months. Oh, well, they're going to work it out. They're going to be like, okay, we'll sell to someone else.
Right.
Yeah.
China, they have a much higher rate on this list. On top of that, there's still that 20% fentanyl tariff rate. Is all of this coming together to be more than a 50% tariff rate for Beijing?
Well, yes, I think it is, and I think it's a combination of things. And, again, that...
You like that, Chiron? Bissett advises countries not to panic. Giant red, Chiron.
You said it was the opposite. He's telling them to sweat it out.
Well, it's weird. I don't know. He's saying both. He's saying not to panic because he doesn't want them to reciprocate or retaliate, I should say.
Right.
He doesn't want them to. But then he's suggesting that Trump might just want them to sweat it out. So I don't know. You're right. It's very mixed messaging.
I think China said today that solving the fentanyl crisis depends on taking off the fentanyl tariffs, and I'm pretty sure that's not the way the sequencing is going to work. They're exporting the precursor chemicals, and every day, every week, every month, Americans are dying, and it's going to have to stop.
When it comes to place,
See, I agree with that. 10,000%. Okay. You don't. If you're like China, you need to stop sending us fentanyl, and they're like, "We'll take the tariffs off first." I'd be like, "Go fuck yourself, China. You stop sending us fentanyl first. What the fuck are you talking about? Then we'll get rid of the tariffs." So I do agree with that. I think that makes perfect sense.
Definitely, yeah.
Okay. Now let me play this short clip here.
They're not going to do anything about the fentanyl because all the people making money on fentanyl are higher ups in the Chinese Communist Party.
Right.
So they're like, what? Fentanyl? Oh.
I'm going to play this short. I'm going to play this short clip. I don't want you to get too worried by his answer at it. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Don't get too panicked. Don't panic. Remember, don't panic.
Know if they're going to be negotiations.
The president had this huge chart showing all of the different rates. Canada and Mexico notably missing on that chart. Why is that?
I'm not sure.
Not sure.
Yeah, what's going on with that?
I think it's a little weird. The Treasury Secretary doesn't know the answer to the question. He's like, I don't know.
But no, that answer totally said he knows exactly why it's not on that chart. He's just.
So you think he just doesn't want to say? Okay.
Yes,
that makes me feel a little better. That makes me feel better if you think he does know. He just doesn't want to say.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. Okay.
Economists were quick to react.
Okay.
And other comments on the outlook. JP Morgan says a recession is now likely if these policies are sustained. Pantheon boosted their PCE core inflation outlook by 1.25 percentage points. They reduced their growth by almost a percentage point. Now, here's interesting back and forth on the Fed. Citi says the Fed will cut aggressively. Morgan Stanley removed its June cut and sees the Fed on the sidelines for a protracted period of time.
Nobody knows what's going to happen.
Nobody knows. The Fed doesn't know. On the growth side, trade partnership worldwide.
You know, it's funny. Didn't you suggest this, or did someone suggest this? They said, like, this is all a super crazy way to get the Fed to cut interest rates.
I did suggest that.
I'm going to make the economy. I'm going to threaten the economy. I'm going to make the economy go bad or go south.
The Fed is going to come in and save us.
Yeah, just to cut interest rates. So that's kind of funny. But
I'll be right back. I got
some estimates. Tariffs will cost $654 billion in a year, or one of the largest tax increases in U.S. history. They said, quote, with tariffs taking effect immediately, American companies will be on the hook for $1 to $2 billion per day in costs for products that were ordered months ago. Even in smaller trading states like Idaho, for example, businesses could pay an extra $5 million in tariffs. The biggest concern was that the president was said to have completely made up the tariff numbers other countries charge the U.S. He said the U.S. was charging those countries half of what they charge us, but his assertion bore little resemblance to the real tariffs other countries charge, most trade experts said. Instead, the White House used a formula few had seen before based on the trade deficit that caused most to scratch their heads. So this tariff policy looks like it's basically resting on made-up numbers.
Can I ask you about the made-up numbers for a second?
Yeah.
We were talking about the made-up numbers a little bit earlier.
I don't think calculated. They're not quite made up, but they get the Trump administration where it wants to be in terms of
right. Well, when you make up the formula, the numbers you come up with are made up.
I don't know whether it's
nobody's seen this formula before.
Right. If in fact you
there it is.
There it is.
It's a real formula.
If in fact, Steve, you wanted to come up with a formula,
how would you do it?
How would you do it? That's my question to you.
Country by country.
But they did. Look, they
really
did,
hard.
They did have a formula. If you look at, talk to a
No, I'm not saying they didn't have a formula.
So they were just talking about the fancy formula. I don't remember if there's something more interesting here.
Always buying it from them. You would have $1 billion trade deficit with them. They would have.
Oh, he's going to kind of explain why he doesn't think the formula makes sense, which is kind of interesting.
And the Sotomy are also saying what a very well-known one. It's absurd and shows a kindergarten level understanding of international law.
Imagine that somebody had something that they're the only ones who had it. Say it was a rare earth mineral, and you needed it, and you bought it from them. And let's say you spent $1 billion buying it from them. You would have $1 billion trade deficit with them. They would have no tariffs on you. And of course, you were taking those rare earth minerals and putting them into computers and value added.
You don't have to look at it that way, Steve. You just got to say we're huge consumers of everything because we're so rich and prosperous. So,
well, that
trade,
4%
trade deficits.
Yeah, and that's why having it be based on this trade deficit alone idea just doesn't make sense, because there's a dozen reasons why you could have a trade imbalance with a country, and it's not necessarily a bad thing whatsoever. It's not necessarily something that you want to, quote, fix or address.
A year for a brownfield, which is an existing plant.
Yeah, I heard.
A year and a half to plant it.
3 years for a greenfield.
And then another year and a half to.
I hear on factories it's usually 3 to 5 years.
I get that entirely, but what does that mean? You think the
Well, see, and that's why, I don't know, maybe I'm skeptical, maybe I'm pessimistic. If it's going to take 3 to 5 years for these places to build, these factories, that's why I'm kind of like, I think they're going to run out the clock. I think they're going to kind of bullshit Trump. I don't think they're actually going to build any of these factories in America unless you get some like very solid legislation that's really cementing these tariffs in place. Or, maybe if the tariffs remain and everyone likes them, then they'll start building. But they're gonna kind of hold out for as long as possible.
It's a giant wild card. Who knows what's going to happen here? We're definitely in uncharted territories.
Right. And he's going to talk about that this concept of the CEOs playing chicken with the Trump administration, which seems to me to be kind of likely.
Yeah.
Which is, and I also talked to a number of people on this issue last night. There's a whole number of CEOs, we talk about playing chicken, who are going to sit now and say to themselves, I can hold out longer than Trump can hold out. Not me personally. But there are companies that are going to say, if I'm going to make the 3 to 5 to 6 year investment in this factory that's not going to even exist for 5 years, what is the prospect that these tariffs are still going to be in effect 5 years from now? That is the fundamental question. And if you don't think, or you think there's even a chance that they won't be, you may just say, you know what, I'll accept what's going on here for a little while because it's not even worth me to bring back the subject.
You see how democracy is good for business? In the sense that a tariff proposal or a tariff plan that went through Congress, that CEO wouldn't have to worry as much about that. Right? I talked to a manufacturer who said, I benefit from the tariffs, but I am not expanding my capacity because I don't know if those tariffs will exist.
It might not be on 5 months from now, much less 5 years.
What's that?
It might not be on 5 months from now, much less 5 years from now.
Well, if that's the case, then what was this all about?
Negotiation.
But, Joe, is this the way to do it? I mean, imagine.
Well, see, and that's the thing is, and I think that's where the difficulty is this negotiation or is it bringing jobs back? Because if it's negotiation, which, I mean, if it's negotiation, that's the only thing that would actually make sense to me, logically. As I said, to do the shock and awe to these countries right off the bat to try to get them to piss their pants, to get them to do whatever it is that you want them to do.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah. But
we'll see if that's the case. If that's the case, then I'll say, hey, it worked. But I guess we'll find out in the coming weeks, months, if that was the ploy here.
They have the same problem though on their end. Maybe not as much in China, where they know more about what's going on in the economy. So I don't necessarily know what's going on in there, and that's why I equate it so much to the planned economy, because like what everyone is doing on an individual level, it's just impossible to tell. It's impossible to tell if this is going to be good or bad or what.
Right. Yeah, but like if as I said, if Trump can just be like, bam, I got these countries to drop their tariffs on America, and they do, I mean, then that's a win. And he's going to run as a win. And I mean, it is a win.
Oh, of course it is.
Right.
Yeah, it is. So think that's going to happen?
I don't know. I couldn't tell you.
8% of global GDP with 5% of the population. This is an enormously wealthy country.
It is.
The idea that other countries are raping and pillaging us is what the term
that does put us.
Okay?
That does set us up. That does set us up as a very large that's not going to care if we're not treated fairly.
That could be true.
It is true.
They send us wine and cheese and Mercedes. That's not rape and pillage. We send them paper in response to that.
Economists were quick to react to.
Okay, there's one other clip we can look at for a couple parts. It's kind of interesting. You're talking to
the now
Commerce Secretary.
I
thought that, I don't know if they always do this on CNBC, but this feels kind of dirty. Watching this is pretty funny.
Well, I think the long term or even the medium term, you've got to expect the United States of American markets are going to do extremely, extremely well. I understand the reordering.
So you have the Commerce Secretary saying midterm, long term, market's going to do well, and then they're flashing like all the red numbers of all the markets going down, like right next to his face. I was like, oh my god.
Long term, everything is going to be fine.
Yeah, but it's like in short term, it's like blah. I don't know if it's intentional. I don't know if they always just play this, but if they don't, it's this kind of fucked up.
Look, that's the thing. If the market goes down significantly, what happens? Does the Trump administration still be intransigent about the whole situation, or what?
You kind of get the, what is it? The gambler, what's it called? The gambling fallacy, sunken cost fallacy problem, where if the Trump administration is saying, okay, there's going to be short-term pain, but there's going to be long-term gain, right? And then there's short-term pain. Can they pull out? Can they change courses? Because they're saying there's going to be short-term pain.
They're setting themselves up to stay in this for the long haul, regardless of if it's bad.
Exactly. And so they are kind of psychologically putting themselves in a situation that's going to make it very difficult for them to change course, unless, as I said, this is what's always kind of, I guess, the thing, everyone talks about, the Trump 10D chess or whatever, is what is the goal here? Is it just to shock these countries into doing what we want? Or is there actually a thought process that this philosophy of tariffs is going to bring jobs back, which I don't think it will. And I think it's going to, if you do just stick with these tariffs and the other countries don't do what we want, I do think it's going to be very bad news for the economy, because I don't think Trump is going to buckle, because I don't know if he can buckle.
Yeah. We'll see. We'll definitely see. It's just if it turns out to be like a losing proposition,
right?
And they get completely invested in it. I mean, this could end horribly. This could definitely end horribly. Did you watch the video that I sent you about how a trade war basically started?
World War I
and the Great Depression.
Yes, I did. Yeah.
Yes.
I don't think it's going to cause a war, but I think, I don't know, because here's what my concern, I guess, is. Because as I said, I think best case scenario, countries very quickly capitulate to America, to Trump. Trump then removes the tariffs from the countries that capitulated, and he claims a victory. Boom, economy does well, right? Economy's that's gonna be a big bounce up for the economy, right? And you could say, hey, I bought on the dip, right? It's fantastic, right? But if the countries are kind of like, we're kind of annoyed at Trump, fuck him. He's being kind of all over the place. Maybe he's gonna be kind of sly and say, well, we're gonna get rid of the tariffs for now. Maybe he's gonna keep the 10% tariff, right? I think if he starts to do shit like that, I think the countries are gonna get fed up with us and with Trump, and they're gonna not play ball. And then I think you're gonna kind of get the downward spiral of the economy.
Yeah, I guess I don't have a lot of faith in Trump. That's the problem.
Right.
Months ago I would have told you that I would think he would buckle. But I'm not so certain about that anymore. And what you just said is completely apt. Like if they're setting themselves up in a way that they can't really reverse themselves, if they're saying, "Oh, this is about a long-term investment."
Right.
Yeah, so I just this plan I have zero faith in. So I think if they continue with this plan, it's probably going to be bad.
Well, I guess the question is, if the second scenario I laid out comes true, and the economy does get bad, and it continues to be bad for months and months and months, and go down and down and down, would the Republicans in Congress? Well, I guess here's the question.
Would they step up? That is
there is an off-road here. There is an off-ramp here that Trump could take on the DL. Now, you could have either the Republicans go against Trump or the Republicans, quote, go against Trump, but don't really go against Trump. Maybe Trump wants them to do this. Like the safe face. Well, I don't know if it's the safe face, but maybe there could be a scenario where Congress could either grow a pair or they could do something that Trump wants to do but doesn't publicly say, which would be they could pass a law I believe they could pass a law to cut all of these tariffs or cut Trump's ability to even give these tariffs and reset it to whatever they want. And they would be able to do that, though they'd obviously need that like a veto-proof majority, which would mean that the Republican Party as a whole would have to be on board with that thought process to do that, which I don't know if they would be.
Or pick up Democrats, which is just...
Well, no, the Democrats are going to the Democrats, they would get easily, right? But the Democrats are going to be, like, if the economy is going bad because of Trump, the Democrats are going to 100% want to jump to be like, we saved the economy. We voted, in Congress. We passed something, right?
God.
They're going to 100% going to want that. And that's going to put additional pressure on the Republicans of like, okay, do they save, do they quote save Trump or do they save the economy by, going against him in Congress? Or is that too much of a win for the Democrats if they do that?
I'm not sure Democrats will vote with Republicans in this political environment.
Well, no, it would be
in any way, shape, or form.
It would be perceived as Republicans voting with Democrats. That's why it would be difficult.
Okay, yeah.
Right. Because they'd be voting against what the president wants. So I don't know. Maybe that is, I thought that was likely, but now I'm saying it, maybe it seems unlikely for that to happen.
Yeah, that doesn't seem likely at all.
It would be too big a win probably for the Democrats.
Politically, yeah.
Politically.
It sucks, but you really have to. And look, I lived through the housing crash, and now I can't remember if it was like a party line vote or not. It seemed
it was pretty bipartisan. The bazooka and all that stuff. Yeah, that was pretty bipartisan.
So if everybody came in to save the day.
But that wasn't really.
The Fed will drop interest rates to like 0%. Like the Fed will start doing interest rate cuts. They might do like 2 cuts at one meeting.
Right. But I think the difference though with 08 is that when the housing crash came, people weren't, at least at first, they weren't perceiving it as like, this is one party's fault. It was just like, oh my God, Wall Street imploded. So if both parties came together to vote to try to fix it, it's not like impugning one of the parties to do that action.
Right.
Markets, but they have been taking advantage of the trading policy, the markets policy. All the policies of the United States of America were designed to make you rich and make us poor. Take our factories from us, go build elsewhere. I mean, Imagine this. Why are all of our pharmaceutical products, the ingredients to our pharmaceutical products, made in Asia? That's not cheap labor. That's just a failed policy that lets the rest of the world gut America. And that's what Donald Trump is here to address, and he's going to change it, and he's going to protect America for our children and our grandchildren.
Hey, Mr. Secretary, who came up with...
See, that's a place where the tariffs, I mean, you want to deal with that situation. My thinking is you go with incentives first, but if people have been trying incentives and the incentives haven't been working, sooner or later, you've got to step it up with a little bit of the stick. And if companies are importing drugs from Asia, like slapping a tariff on those companies could motivate them to actually build some sort of manufacturing base in the United States for those products. So who gets a tariff? I'm not so upset about in that kind of situation, even though it is American companies, right?
Right.
With the equation that we've shown, I know it's hard to get a clean number.
Oh, here, wait, let me jump ahead here.
Dude, Wall Street does love this stuff. They're like, cheap fucking products overseas? Hell yeah.
Yeah, obviously that's what they want.
Mexico and Canada, I'd really like to talk about, because USMCA is still in place. So if you make a car in America and the parts are made in Canada or Mexico, there is no tariff. The auto parts business of Canada and Mexico are not being touched. Energy prices are not being touched. You know,
see that? Okay, he already cried uncle on the automakers. He's already like, oh yeah, you're fine, you're fine. This is the thing. I'm like, he's going to get calls from all of these different businesses, and he's going to hear firsthand accounts about how this is bad for business, and he's probably going to make changes from there.
Right. Yeah. So what he's referring to, which is a good thing to hear, was there was this concern because people were saying, well, wait a minute. Even cars that are made in America by American companies, every single part's not made in America. They get a bunch of parts that are made in Canada, get a bunch of parts that are made in Mexico, a bunch of parts are made in America. They all come together in America, and boom, we got a car. And if you were to tariff the parts coming into America, it would make the car like, 50% more expensive or something.
Yeah, because you get tariffs on every individual part as it went back and forth across the border.
Exactly. So that was good to hear. But then I looked into it.
Oh no, Sitch.
And so what he's talking about, he doesn't say it here, but this is only temporary. Now, hopefully it's what you're saying, people calling Trump and they, complain to Trump and he's like, okay, we're not going to do that. But currently, as it stands, they're not saying that this is forever. They're saying that they're going to decide in a month from now on May 3rd, whether or not to keep it this way. So for this month, it's going to be this way. But next month, who knows? It could be that they're going to tariff all the different parts when they start coming across the border.
Well, this is another reason why they would have the wait and see approach, because they want constituents to weigh in. They want people to come to them and tell them how these things actually work. So they're throwing this out there. They'll get a bunch of feedback from people. And obviously they don't want to take the first deal on the table, right? If China comes to them and says, okay, we'll drop the tariff, you drop your tariff. They want to hear from our side. How is it affecting our businesses, right? Is it helpful? Right. Is it hurting? Before they just give in to China. So that's probably why they'd like to let it roll for a month or so.
Well, on one hand, I don't know, because they kind of insinuated that the reason they're letting it roll is because legally, because of the trade agreement that Trump actually set up in his first term, like there was some complication to whether he even legally could throw a tariff on these parts. And so they were making it kind of sound like, well, they were taking a month just to figure out how to actually do it.
Oh, this is on the car thing?
This is on the car thing.
Okay. I'm talking just about the whole tariff situation.
Like okay. I got you.
All of them. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
But they were probably learning from the car situation, because obviously when the car situation hit, they probably got a bunch of information that they didn't really have before they started talking about tariffing China or Mexico and Canada. Right.
That's a good point. That is a
good
point.
So then they got a much better view of the picture. And this kind of goes in line with Elon Musk's business philosophy, right? You kind of make big changes and then you kind of see what happens. You get feedback from the environment. So, but this is why it is a lot more about it. Like, it just seems more planned economy, right?
Right. So
They're
basically,
like,
what you're saying is there's a glass case that says "Do not break," and then Trump takes a big hammer and he's like, "I'm going to break this case." And then once he says that, a bunch of people come out and say, "Whoa, whoa, whoa! Let me explain why you shouldn't break that case." And they give him new information, and then he decides whether to break the case or not.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly.
Okay, gotcha.
I don't know if I agree with the case analogy because there's no going back from breaking the case, but
sure,
they can. Yeah. This is I mean, they can put it back together again here.
Right.
He's shaking the box.
He's shaking the box.
American workers.
Let's take it for instance. Australia, for instance, hit with a 10% tariff. And they don't accept beef imports from the United States. That goes back to when they thought mad cow was going to be imported with some of those things. If they were to start...
See, look at that. They stopped importing fucking forever ago when we had the mad cow stuff. And they're like, yeah, we can live without it now. As soon as you make these big changes, it's like they stick. They totally stick.
Yeah, it's interesting because I looked into this because I was like, is it still because of the mad cow thing? I did find one story that claimed it wasn't because of that anymore.
Oh, okay.
Right? Now, that maybe the story is wrong, and it could just be because you're right. There's a lot of momentum, especially in governments. Like once something changes, it's very difficult to change it again. But I found one article where Australia was claiming that it wasn't because of that. They're claiming that they have certain health requirements that like the cows and the meat like have to like go through to make sure it's like safe to consume. And while they do say that America meets that criteria, they say Mexico and Canada does not meet the criteria. And the problem is American meat manufacturers don't want to spend the money or the time to differentiate between meat from Mexico, Canada, or the US when they give it and sell it to Australia. So that was the problem. Australia was saying, yeah, if we were just buying US meat, so this is what the article claims, maybe it's wrong. They're claiming if we were just buying and could get guaranteed that it was just US meat, we would buy it, but we can't get that guarantee from US companies. So.
Interesting.
Now, I want you to listen to his answer here, Secretary Howard Lutnick's answer, because it kind of goes back to what I said in the beginning of the stream, that I had kind of a problem with the whole philosophy here, is that he's going to talk at first about fairness in terms of reciprocal tariffs. And then mid-sentence, he's going to switch to like security and bringing jobs back, even though doing these are like opposite goals.
Right.
Okay. And he kind of says both of them at the same time. And you're like, well, you can't do both of those things, but whatever.
Taking American beef imports, would that be something that would get them an exemption? And how quickly do you think that could happen?
I don't think the word exemption is going to be a factor. I don't think that's such a thing. I think what there's going to be is a world of fairness. Let's go try to figure out ways for the world to treat us more fairly and more properly. I don't think it's effective for the world to retaliate. I mean, those things are silly. We are the consumer of the world, right? We buy $20 trillion worth of goods, and we are basically the buyer of everybody else's in the world's items. So what is the point of them going higher? So that we go higher? I mean, come on, look, he gave a 50% discount. What he's saying is, look, we need to rebuild American.
I think this is persuasive. This is so not persuasive. Like what? Why would the other countries go higher? Like, they're the ones being unfair. We gave you a half discount, okay?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. That doesn't seem very persuasive to me.
It's funny. It's totally funny.
Like, well, I guess it's persuasive to an American audience, which he's talking to. So I guess it's
that's who he's talking to.
Right. It's not persuasive to another country. They'd be like, go fuck yourself.
We've been kicked around by the world for so long, and now Trump is standing up to
the bullies.
Yeah.
Yes. The poor bullies of America being the richest country in the world. Yes.
Manufacturing base. We can't allow the United States of America to not produce steel. We can't allow the United States of America not to produce pharmaceuticals. We can't have a war where we can't get antibiotics and we have to call another country to make a missile or to make a plane. I mean, these are obvious things. We need to have domestic production. We need to employ Americans. And I think that is the model that Donald Trump is seizing on. We need to employ Americans for the...
See, because I with that last part, I agree with that completely. When it comes to security, we should be making sure we're building our own weapons, our own chips, our own military, our own medicine. I 100% agree with that. But that has nothing to do with reciprocal fairness for tariffs whatsoever. So if Trump just came in and said, for our own safety, we need to be building bing, bam, boom, I would be like, oh, I actually agree with that. Yeah, maybe it's going to make, the market go down a little bit. It's going to make those products maybe more expensive, but I think it's worth it.
You can keep the tariffs on, right? If even if the companies move a plant over here, because he said, the way to avoid the tariff is to manufacture in the United States. Then you have access to the United States market.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It would, but I guess it would depend, because I would imagine
then
what
you
the
would
companies
keep the
would want
on,
to do.
right?
Because I'm assuming what the companies would want to do is they'd say, okay, we'll build a plant in America, right? They're not going to probably be able to produce the entire supply of the American product in that one plant. So they would want...
That's what we'd encourage them to do, right?
Right, but so they'd probably want an exception for everything just by building one or two plants in America. And then I guess the question would be...
sells 10,000 cars a year in America. We want them to build 10,000 cars in America here.
Well, my understanding is that a lot of the car companies, I don't know if most, I know that I think Toyota does that. I think some of
they do.
The car companies do have, the foreign car companies do have factories in America already.
Sometimes I've heard they have assembly plants where
they have assembly plants, right?
Yeah.
Right. And so I don't know if they're going to get exemptions when they get hit with this 25% tariff for cars.
Right.
So they're going to be mad about that. They're like, what the fuck? We built plants in here and you're still fucking with us.
Fuck yeah. Japan's going to be pissed. What's Japan say? Because they do have a Toyota plant here. And
Right. I think, to me, my thought process, if I was president, the way that I would look at this is, because as I said, I agree with some of these policies. I think that just trying to do it blanket to everyone doesn't make sense. It's impossible. You're never going to have balance trade with everyone. You don't really want balance trade with everyone. I think what you should do, if you're the president, you should pick the key future industry that you think is going to be the most important industry in the world going forward. And you say, we're going to make that in America. And we have been doing this so far. This is why, we were trying to ramp up oil production so much. And we're kind of at a turning point where it's very easy, or it seems like it's very easy, to see what this key future industry is going to be. And it's obviously robots and AI. And so I think what would be a better thing to do would be to say, okay, we're going to make sure we're going to use tariffs. We're going to use everything at our disposal to make sure that the robot factory is in America.
Yeah,
that everyone buys from.
Totally agree with what
that we're going to make the AI factory that programs the robots is going to be in fucking America. That the chips you need for the robots is going to be in America. Make sure that the fucking robots are made in America. Because I'll tell you, if the rest of the world needs to buy robots from America, they're not going to fuck with us because they need our fucking robots.
Yeah, we solve the labor issue.
Right.
We solve our labor issue as well. Like, it doesn't get any cheaper labor than fucking robots, right? I mean,
yes.
Why are we manufacturing shit in China again, right? For cheap labor. If the robot factory's over here, we're sitting pretty.
What they might do is, because it still costs a lot to build the factory itself. Mm-hmm. So I think what would probably be the future is, unless there's wars and shit, which changes everything, but assuming there's no wars, is that China will buy the robots from America or whatever country, and they'll still put them in the factory in China to make whatever the shit is, because the factory physically exists already.
Right. So make their tchotchke over there. Right.
Right. That's what I'm saying. That's what I would do. Make sure that we have the factories that build the robots. That's going to be the most important technology, the most important industry going forward. It's going to be robots and AI. So we got to get out. That's where I would concentrate all my energy on.
Cars are big. Cars are big too. So, I mean, but like cars were that big thing for the last economy. Robots are going to be that new thing. So
right. Cars and oil.
I completely agree.
Right.
Yeah, I completely agree. Robots are going to restructure the economy as well. Right. Yeah, they should focus on that instead of worrying about, oh God, the little things. Diamonds. Who cares?
Who cares about shiny rocks for women? Okay.
Buy your
women
diamonds
and rappers.
wherever. Yeah.
Yeah. Doesn't matter. Okay, let me read some Streamlabs or some super chats here.
So we done with the tariff stuff? You had
unless there's anything else you want to say about the tariffs.
Did you want to do the update on your?
I do, but I should read the supers first, and then we'll come back to that. So
okay, no worries.
Because if you got a hard out,
no worries.
Brian for $55, thanks so much, says the tariffs is economic genius. The point is to add leverage to negotiate a new exchange rate pegged to the dollar, where the other countries' currencies will rise along with the dollar, keeping our dollar competitive so we can export. National defense issue. You have to tariff smaller countries too. It keeps countries like China from avoiding their tariffs.
Who was that? Where are
Brian, we for $50.
Oh.
The point is to add leverage to negotiate a new exchange rate pegged to the dollar.
Yeah, how are you?
Is that the point?
What, you don't negotiate. The exchange rate for currency isn't negotiated. It's a market process done by currency traders. It's not like a negotiation process involved in it.
Yeah, I don't know enough about that process to know how that would be accomplished. If it can be accomplished and how it would be accomplished.
People buy and sell dollars just like any other commodity. So
no, but like, because it sounds like what he's saying is he's trying to say that you would force other countries to peg their currency to the dollar, like instead of pegging it to gold or whatever. You're saying that your currency has to be pegged specifically to the dollar, which, I mean, first of all, if that happened, yes, that would be amazing for America. I can't imagine it would happen because that would essentially, what you're suggesting, unless I'm misunderstanding what you're saying, Brian, what you're suggesting would be that every other country in the world is going to give up their own economic sovereignty to America, which I cannot imagine under any circumstances that they would ever do that, unless it's like World War III and they're dying.
I mean, Argentina did that, right?
Right, but they had to because their economy collapsed. But so unless you're saying that every country's economy is going to collapse, like I don't think Trump can force them into doing something like that. So I'm skeptical that that'd be the process, unless I misunderstood what you said. And then Brian for another $50 says, I don't think you're seeing the goal clearly. The goal is to increase exports and manufacturing. This is all tied to national defense to deal with China. When dealing with a near peer, we need to have the manufacturing base to deal with the possible war. Well, listen, I already agreed with that aspect. I don't think you can manufacture everything. So I'm saying you should focus on certain things. We should focus on weapons, robots, things of that nature, medicine. I agree with that completely. But again, I mean, you say that I'm not saying the deal clearly. I'm saying that they're not articulating the deal clearly. Now, maybe you say it's intentional. Maybe it's not. But they're not articulating that. If they just said the goal is national security, fuck all this other shit about reciprocal trade or whatever, then I'd say, okay, I'm mumble with that. But they're not really saying that. And I think that uncertainty is kind of making people in the markets wobbly.
I understand that we want to get them to open up their markets to our products and services, to our business owners, to our producers. So I don't know how feasible that is for all the reasons we talked about, right?
Right.
We're not going to be able to sell SUVs in these countries where everyone's poor.
Well, we could still have manufacturing in our country, regardless of whether we can sell SUVs in our country to some extent.
Right. But he's talking about getting them to open up their markets.
Right.
So if they open up their markets and they say, oh yeah, sure, come on, zero tariff, come sell your products here. What products are we necessarily going to sell there? I guess what they're worried is we're going to be selling them grain, right? And their farmers are going to starve. Because we have huge agribusinesses that can produce it so much cheaper, and they're actually out there tilling the field with their ox, right?
Right.
That's probably the protectionism that's going on.
Brian in the chat says, I just mean that if the dollar increases in value by 10%, then they have to let their currency rise by 10%, keeping us competitive.
They were saying that the dollar was going to increase in value, but the dollar's down. A lot of people were talking about it but today the dollar's down, and they were asking, hey, I thought the dollar was supposed to go up, and that was going to offset this stuff.
Right, but I think he's just trying to say that by increasing our exports, it's going to have, I assume you're saying that by increasing our exports, it's going to have this downstream effect. Is that the argument you're making? I assume that's the argument that Brian's making then. By
increasing our exports,
it's going to just have this downstream effect. It's not that they're necessarily going to convince countries to peg their currency to our currency, which they would not do.
Mm-hmm.
Then Brian from $50 says, thank you so much, Brian. Look at this.
Yeah, look at Brian.
All the deficit money. I do appreciate it. His plan is to stop currency manipulation like Reagan did with the Plaza Accords with Japan, equalize the strength of the dollar to balance out the imbalance of the currency exchange so we can have the ability to manufacture in America. I guess we'll have to see. We'll have to see if it plays out that way. So,
yeah, the currency exchange only is relevant when you're talking to importers and exporters, though. So, like, obviously, if you're manufacturing stuff in America and selling to Americans, like, the currency exchange never even touches your business.
Right.
So, when they talk about strong dollar or weak dollar, they're talking specifically in terms of currency trading, where you think of currency as a commodity, where I think the dollar is going to lose value. So basically, I'm going to sell a bunch of dollars and buy them back cheaper.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of thing.
Trump always accuses China of manipulating its currency, right? To lower it intentionally.
Currency manipulation. Yeah.
Right. Which would be the question. So.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. JMac or Circuit Far, thanks so much for $10. Daddy JMac says, if you guys are more than 15 minutes late, I'm putting tariffs on every stream going forward. We, the chat, deserve economic and temporal fairness. Wow.
True. Oh,
there you go.
We're going to be on time from here on out. Look, I'm always on time. Well, not always.
That's not true. Were we late today? I feel like we were on time, or we were only like
I think we were on time. Okay. Yeah. We started talking about this stuff, but
right.
Then we were like, we should just talk about this on stream.
Brian says the currency exchange pushes companies to manufacture in other countries instead of America. That's why we have to fix the currency exchange rate. Well, I know that's part of it.
It's cheap labor.
I know. So I'm saying I know it's part of it, but I mean, it sounds like you're saying that's like the bulk of it. I don't believe that's accurate. I don't think it's the bulk of it is from the currency manipulation. I know it's part of it, but I mean, there's still I don't know, when you talk about them making the iPhones in China, they're paying these people like fucking pennies. They're paying them even if the Chinese money was, stronger, they still would be paying them like, pittance compared to what you'd have to pay someone in America to do this. So it would increase it, definitely, but I don't think it would be comparable to America. Joe the Make for $10 says historically tariffs are not associated with price increases and instead really only modern corporate profits. Steel prices during Trump's first term were stable or even fell in some cases. To add, the CCP actually paid most of the cost of tariffs on steel as a form of business subsidy. Well, I'm trying to remember because I remember looked up specifically. I heard this exact point about steel, and I could have swore they told me.
So the government just basically paid the tariffs for the businesses?
Yeah, because they paid for the Chinese businesses, right? I could have swore that actually steel prices did go up by like some comparable amount. I don't remember. And I don't know, like every video I've seen, again, I'm not expert subject. Every video that I've seen, mostly from Republicans and right-wing organizations, were all saying, historically, tariffs have only brought ruin to the country and destroyed the economy. So it's kind of interesting that the politics have sort of flip-flopped on the situation, but it's the way it goes.
Yeah, I'm not certain on either side of this.
Right.
I mean, I don't have enough information. I don't know that they have enough information. They're obviously going to get a lot more information because people are going to come to them with the various business issues that they run into. So
right.
We'll see what happens.
Jay Macroeconomic, thanks so much for the $100. Thank you.
Oh my goodness.
Says, I made you guys villains in City of Heroes. Oh, look at, wow. When translating the powers from comic the game, I chose darkness manipulation for Sitch and energy melee for Skull Crusher. For movement, Sitch is going to teleport, but I don't know what to give Skull Crusher. Super speed, maybe. Super speed or flight, if you can give flight.
Why, it would be great.
That's cool.
Who doesn't want to fly?
Oh, you know what? I think I saw your pictures.
Yeah, they were great.
Yeah, those are super cool. So. Okay. And Malik, thank you so much for the $20, says just tuned in, but these moronic tariffs have only accomplished two things: crashing the economy and pushing our biggest and most important trade partners right into China's arms. Trump just lost the AI arms race for nothing. Guess we'll find out.
Well, that's a strong take there.
I hope not. But maybe. We'll see. Insta Sachs for 16 months says, I love how the herd and McDonald Islands have a 10% tariff on the U.S. despite being unpopulated. Must be those darn penguins. Yeah, that was part of the makes me think that maybe the ChatGPT explanation is the real explanation, because everyone's pointing out that there's these islands, the herd McDonald Islands, which are uninhabited, and yet for some reason they're on the chart and they got the 10% tariff. And some people are saying, well, they got the 10% tariff because they're owned by Australia, but the whole point is, why are they even on the list if they don't fucking do anything? They're uninhabited. So that makes me think there's some kind of automatic process that generated that list.
That's hilarious.
Because otherwise you would be
tariffing the penguins.
Yeah, because otherwise you would be like, I'm not putting what's the point of this? Or people would make fun of you if you did it. So Solidoj for 27 months. Thanks so much. Says this has been a great learning point. The stupidity of the pro-tariff people. All they have are lies and emotional claims. Wow.
Look at this.
There you go.
Solidoj coming out strong. I mean, I lean towards Solidoj's position on the tariffs. So, and now look, the market, I'm watching, the market closes in 15 minutes and it's going to definitely close at session lows. So,
yeah.
It's basically tried to make a comeback all day long, but nah.
I don't know if I don't agree blanketly, because as I said, if we put tariffs on things to make sure that I don't know if tariffs would accomplish this, but if we did everything we could, including maybe tariffs, to make sure we're building the robots, I would support that. So, but I think you got to be specific. I don't think you just do like a general blanket on everybody.
I have zero faith in this idea that we're trying to get to a point where we have perfectly reciprocal trade with every single nation. That's just not how it fucking works. Okay.
Well, there's two arguments. There's either A, the Trump administration is retarded, or B, they know it's a bullshit argument and they're trying to accomplish a different goal. Right.
Right. Yeah.
Now, unfortunately, this seems to be the same crossroads we get with like 90% of Trump administration policies. So I don't know which one of those is the correct interpretation. I guess we'll have to see if it plays out. So, because if there are countries that are willing to drop their tariffs and they still keep our tariffs on, that would make me think that they're retarded, as opposed to that it was just a ploy.
Even if they're trying to get manufacturing to come back to the United States, they can still buy into the principle that we need to have perfect trade with every other nation.
Right. I'm saying if they actually believe that, they're stupid.
Yeah,
if they're just
I think they do.
Okay. I'm saying the other alternative is they're just using that as an excuse to do whatever the real plan is.
What makes?
Right.
What
I don't know.
It's
like, right.
What makes you think they don't believe it?
Because it's so stupid. I don't want to believe they believe it.
That's so crazy. I'm starting to think they do believe it.
Okay. I mean,
they really
right.
want equal reciprocal trade with every single nation. They're like,
I
this
hope
deal
not.
has to be, I am Mr. Art of the deal.
Right.
This deal needs to be fair.
We'll see.
So weird.
Alex Wright for $5 says, don't forget the critics who said you have TDS if you predicted Trump's blanket tariffs. Tune those people out. The tariff schedule is a disaster. Oh, I'll be honest. I wasn't really like tapped in, but I mean, if people were saying that, obviously they're going to be coping today because we got blanket tariffs.
It's going to be an interesting next couple of weeks. That's for sure.
It will be. Yes. Well,
Freedom Day market down 5%. Few more days like this, we're going to be down 20%.
Right.
I mean, we're already down. People are saying down 20%.
777X for $5 says, plot twist. It's Trump's lesson to America on socialism. Economic equality isn't good. There you go. Guru Ralph for 32 months says, all these trades are mainly to keep our currency circulating. Problem is we've cut off our nose to spite our face. Something had to be done. Isn't it the opposite though? Is it right? If you slap tariffs on everyone, isn't it going to make it less likely that your currency is circulating in their countries?
If you slack, yes. Oh, now the package is actually here.
Okay.
Oh
you can go get the bag. Yeah, because what that means is, yeah, I think that makes it. I'm confused. I think that would make it less likely because it would mean that people would be less likely to buy those foreign goods, which mean that they'd have less U.S. dollars circulating in those countries, and then they're not the ones paying the tariff to the government. The private company that bought the goods in America is who's paying the money to the government. The Real Holtender for $5 says, can't we grow diamonds? And aren't they more ethically sourced if they're lab grown? I know that's not the point, but I'm just saying. Yes, it is kind of crazy. I believe we can grow diamonds at much, much cheaper rates than you get them in, the wild mines normally. And yet, I guess because they look different or because the natural ones are more rare. So they're still worth more. And so because women and rappers like shiny objects, I guess we put up with slave labor and child labor in Africa somewhere. Sir Hostess of Liver for 100 Kazark says, it's kind of funny living in post-Soviet country where everyone is different shades of broke compared to the US, and then hear from Trump complaining about how we're ripping you guys off. Yeah, it's got to be weird. It's got to be super weird to be in one of those countries, Sir Hostess, and you're like, what the fuck is Trump talking about? So Brian for $10. Thank you, Brian. Says we have a trade deficit because we are a reserve currency, keeping the dollar stronger compared to other countries' currencies, meaning we gave up the ability to manufacture. Yeah, I guess I think that's true. I think that is true.
Did you figure out the currency manipulation? I've never really understood the currency manipulation. I guess I've never really dived into the actual process that takes place for currency manipulation.
We can do what the Trump administration did, okay? We can ask ChatGPT.
Yeah.
How does China manipulate its currency? Let's see what ChatGPT says. Okay.
How would we manipulate our currency? I mean, what is currency manipulation? Well, we raise interest rates and lower interest rates to try to maintain price stability. Isn't that a form of manipulation?
It is. You're correct. But when Trump or someone says China's manipulating currency, what they mean is China is intentionally lowering the yuan's value to the dollar in order to make it so that we're more likely to want to buy their shit, right? That's the thought process. Because the dollar is stronger. We increase our trade deficit with China.
They have a bunch of dollars, and those dollars are what they're using to buy our shit. Obviously, we're not selling them shit in yuan.
No. We're buying their shit. Right?
Right. Yes.
That's the
dollars.
benefit. Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
So a strong dollar means
lets us buy more stuff from China.
We can buy more of their shit. Yeah.
Right. It says, according to ChatGPT, says China's central bank can buy US dollars on the foreign exchange market. This increases demand for the dollar, increases supply of yuan since they're giving yuan in exchange. Result, dollar gets stronger, yuan gets weaker. Benefit, Chinese goods become cheaper for Americans, which boosts China's imports.
So they're just printing yuan. They're like, they control the printing press on the yuan so that they can, like, if they're just printing yuan up, they can buy those dollars with yuan.
Right.
Yeah.
Also,
so
China
that would
restricts
be the currency manipulation.
Right. Also, China restricts the flow of money out of the country. This keeps yuan demands low overseas, which helps preventing the yuan from getting too strong. If investors could freely move money out, it might push the yuan up, which is interesting because I thought, the big concern was that, they were going to use the yuan as oil dollar instead of, the U.S. currency. So.
Yeah, they have real restrictions on what the Chinese people can actually have, though.
Right.
Like, I'm not sure if Chinese citizens can have, like, an American bank account, can hold dollars.
I don't know. China also doesn't let the yuan flow freely. Instead, the central bank sets a daily reference rate, basically a target value for the yuan versus the dollar. Then allows the yuan to trade within a narrow band around the value. If the yuan starts getting stronger, the central bank may step in to weaken it.
Mm-hmm.
Also, China holds trillions in U.S. dollar reserves. These reserves give it the power to influence the yuan-dollar exchange rate quickly and heavily whenever needed. This is all done to boost exports and fuel economic growth. Exporting is the major engine of China's economy. A cheaper yuan means cheaper Chinese products, which means more global sales. So there you go. So that's the answer. Does that answer the question?
Yeah. Still don't really have a good model for it.
Well, okay.
They're basically
I understand
manipulating it in currency, on currency trading platforms by trading currency.
Right.
Which is the same as any kind of trading, right? If you have $1 trillion, you can seriously affect the price of anything by either, like, if it gets, like, you can set a floor on anything if you have a lot of product, right? Because you can constantly come in and buy anyone selling that product at a certain price.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I understand how it works. Yeah.
Okay. Brian for $10 says you guys should look into the Plaza Accords. Trump's goal is the same as Reagan's back then, only for the world to deal with our strong dollar due to our reserve currency. ChatGPT says Plaza Accords. Agreement made in 1985 between the U.S., Japan, West Germany, United Kingdom, and France. Met at the Plaza Hotel in New York City, where the name comes from. In the 1980s, the U.S. dollar was very strong, like too strong. Thank you, ChatGPT. U.S. exports become super expensive for other countries to buy. At the same time, countries like Japan and Germany were running big trade surpluses, selling tons of goods to the United States. The U.S. was running a huge trade deficit and losing manufacturing jobs. The U.S. wanted to devalue the dollar to boost U.S. exports, reduce the trade imbalance, and help revive struggling industries. So what did the accord do? The 5 countries agreed to work together to lower the value of the U.S. dollar compared to other major currencies. They did this by a coordinated intervention in currency markets, like selling dollars and buying other currencies, and sending a clear message to markets, we want the dollar to go down. Afterwards, the dollar fell sharply, about 50% against the yen and mark over a few years. U.S. exports got cheaper. Trade deficit improved a bit. Japan's exports became more expensive. Japan's economy changed big time. Japan then tried to stimulate its economy with cheap credit, which led to a massive asset bubble and later crash in the 1990s. Well, I don't know if it sounds like China. I mean, it sounds like Japan ended up not being benefiting from this, but okay. Yeah, but if that's the goal, Brian, doesn't Trump have to say that's the goal and actually work with the countries to do this, to accomplish this? I don't know if he can do it in this. I mean, how does he accomplish it? Like logistically, how is this accomplished in this roundabout way? Or what you're suggesting is that Trump's going to throw these like crazy tariffs out and then he's going to reveal in the future and say, aha, if you really want these tariffs to go away, you have to make the US dollar get weaker. Like he's going to reveal the secret plan at the end. Is that what you're suggesting? Because I
I'm
mean,
wondering if Brian is a currency trader because he seems to know a lot about this. I've never traded currencies, so
right.
but it just you know you're basically buying some currency. I mean, you can start off with dollars and you can buy any currency, right? And it's based on exchange rate, and
Hmm.
you're basically playing that the exchange rate will work in your favor, right?
Right, right.
So if you're a 1-to-1 exchange rate and then the value of the currency drops like 10%, you actually, I guess, whatever currency you're buying, you want to go up. So that currency would go up 10%. Then you can buy that. Then you can sell the currency that you're holding at a higher value to the other currency that you've sold off, right?
I believe Brian in the past told us he worked in finance, if I recall correctly. I thought
Oh,
it was
okay.
Brian that said that. But I just want to make sure I understand the argument. Is the idea that, I mean, I listened to Trump's speech when he revealed the tariff board. Maybe I missed it. I don't remember him saying that the point of all this was the currency that lower the dollar. I know he said that in the past that he wants the dollar to be weaker, but which is funny because then every time the dollar gets stronger, all the MAGA people cheer, even though it's the exact opposite of what Trump wants.
The dollar, everyone on CNBC this morning was saying the dollar's down.
Well, then listen, that's good for Trump, right? That's what he wants. Lethal Strain for $5 says Walmart said it's renegotiating prices with suppliers to not increase prices in America. Well, there you go. And for another $5 says Trump needs to delete the red tape and get them built before the next admin kills any of the deals he makes. Well, that's a good point. He would. Well, I guess, as I said, though, it depends if those companies actually really want to do it or not. If they're just, because I feel like they would intentionally drag their feet. But generic payment for $5 says, "You fools, you clowns. This is all a bet between Trump and JMac. The winner gets a crisp new $1 bill. I need to go rewatch Trading Places." There you go.
Is that what's going
There you
on?
go.
So I'm just
That's
looking at
funny.
a dollar index chart, and I mean the dollar's down big, but
Well, there you go. Look, it's working. It's working. Brian was right.
Year to date, down 5.8%.
Right. I just watched a whole video about the history of frozen concentrated orange juice and how that relates to Trading Places. So there you go.
Really?
Yes. Have you ever had frozen concentrate orange juice?
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not very good. I love fresh squeeze better.
Well, I think a lot.
Who doesn't, right?
It's weird because when I was a kid,
oh my God,
not a couple times. I don't know why. There was. Oh.
What is this? The thing is, what is this dollar index in comparison to? Because aren't all the different currencies? I mean, what is the underlying asset of this in this dollar index thing? Up or down next to what? Oh, I guess next to itself, but anyway, Sitch, are you back or did we lose you all the way?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now, yeah.
Okay. It's just my RAM. I still need to buy new RAM.
What? I sent you a link on Amazon like a fucking year ago. Oh my God. It's just like, have you ever plugged in an extension cord? That's about as complicated as it is.
I've never plugged in an extension cord in my life.
Don't plug the RAM in when your computer's on, okay?
You got to turn it off, really. You have to turn it off. You have to let it be off for a couple of minutes to make sure there's no charge left.
Turn your computer off and then put the RAM in.
Right.
Look, let's do some currency trading. We'll figure this shit out.
Okay.
But this is the thing, because the United States can print the dollars, right? So I mean, they could drive the price of dollars down just by printing more dollars, right?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
By printing dollars and selling dollars, that's going to make the value of the dollar collapse, right? Because sooner or later, people are going to be like, "Oh, I don't want that many dollars." Geez.
Yeah, but that's the
Lower
issue.
the price.
Yeah, I mean, wouldn't we have to print so many dollars to get to that point that it would be bad and we'd have massive inflation?
Yeah, that's
you wouldn't want to do that.
How's that work in China?
Well, because it's because nobody wants their dollars. They don't let the dollars leave China. So that's why it's much easier for them to control the value of it. Right. So Nomad, thanks so much for joining.
Printing yuan too, so
Nomad, thanks so much for joining the Free Will Seekers. Salty Trisket for $5 says the virgin tariffs versus the Chad land value tax. There you go.
That would be good. Look, that's like a meme. Everyone loves a land value tax, but it's a great idea. I don't know if it'll ever pass.
Right. Naked Assad for 60 squibbles.
Yeah, what
I
is
think
that?
might be shekel. I think it's shekel.
Oh, yeah.
For 6 shekels. Thank you for the 6 shekels. Says, do me a good one, pretty please. Hey now. There you go.
Look at that.
Thank
Someone's working on a video.
Got it.
Hello there. I like the hello there.
Hello there. Furid Turgeson. It's Furid Turgeson. Thanks so much for the $10.
Yeah.
For $20. Thank you so much. Furid says U.S. has a trade deficit because U.S. has a reserve currency. Supplying the world with dollars mathematically requires having a trade deficit. Adam, check out the book Trade Wars Are Class Wars.
I will check it out.
There you go.
I need a good book on this. I don't have a good metaphor. That's why it's so difficult.
You need the metaphor.
I do. Yeah, look.
Interesting.
Metaphors help.
They do.
I do. I mean, I know supply and demand. I don't usually think in terms of supply and demand on currency, because there is obviously the United States government has a monopoly on the currency, right? They control the supply. So, and when you control the supply, you control demand. Well, no, I guess demand you never control, but you can satiate demand and drive the price down.
So I sent you a video from the author, so you can check it out, and then if you like him, you can get the book.
Okay. I took it down so I could see if it was on Audible.
M8566 for $5 says, not all the costs get passed to customers. My company buys from Asia. We got a bunch of vendors to pay for half the tariffs. Well, there you go. Who are the vendors passing the cost off to? Right? Are they passing off to you? They pass off to somebody, or are they just taking a profit hit?
Maybe Trump will get lucky in the long run and he'll end up shrinking the money supply. And this is a tax on all. Well, is it a tax on the businesses? Because they're just going to pass it on to the consumer at higher prices.
Yeah, but wait,
right?
but how's it going to be? Listen, they're going to pass some massive tax cuts. Okay. So that's going to offset any.
Oh, you're right.
Any sort of shrinking of the money supply.
Never mind.
Yeah,
never mind. It's never
You're
works.
thinking about this way too logically. Okay.
It never works.
Right. A Newt for $2 says, she said, yes, I have a fiance now. Woo! Go
Really?
Newts!
Holy, that's awesome. That is the greatest. Look, that's what I like to hear.
Awesome. Good for you. Good
I
for
like
you.
to hear
Everybody
about
clap
people
for Newt.
falling in love. That's what I like to hear.
Yes. Lethal Strain for $5 says, Trump just announced that he will drop all tariffs and wait, what?
If Canada and Greenland join the U.S.
Is that real? Or he said it's a comedy show, right? LOL. So.
He's been saying that for a long time now.
Right.
I
know, but I assume it's stupid. So
the market's closed now, right? So we can, close at the lows of the day.
Let's see. Article from today. Canada to counter unjustified U.S. tariffs with 25% tax on cars. Canadian Prime Minister says country will impose tax on U.S. vehicles not compliant with Continental Free Trade Deal. Dun, dun, dun. Well, there you go. Dr. Adam refriended Brigadier General. Thanks so much for the $20.
Brigadier General. Yes. Welcome, Adam. Welcome.
I will predict game journalists might claim that Trump's tariffs are why game prices have increased, ignoring the roles of unions, better pay, and improving working conditions. A-Team reigns supreme and this shit.
Oh my God. Look at that.
Wow.
That's what good barbecue will do.
All because of Dr. Hogley fucking Woggly. Jesus Christ.
The power of Hogley Woggly. Look at that.
Terrible.
I hope you got yourself a big bottle of that barbecue sauce to take home with you.
Listen, I'm going to give a very contentious take, okay? I think everyone complaining that Nintendo is charging $90 to $100 for their new games are fucking whiners, okay? If that's what it costs, then that's what it costs. If you don't want to buy it, then don't buy it. Like, games are going to be more and more expensive. The price of everything's increasing, so it sucks. Listen, I agree. It fucking sucks, but like, I don't know what to tell you.
It's not about the cost. It's what the market will bear. And they know you guys are going to pay it. They know you want your fucking game. They know that secretly you're like, oh, cheap at twice the price. I would pay 3 times the amount for this game. Oh my God.
The cost
it's like crack cocaine.
It's weird to me because the cost of video games has not gone up, matched the cost of inflation like at all. Because I remember like I could swear to God that in like 20 fucking years ago, when I bought like the PlayStation 1, or I should say my grandparents bought me a PlayStation 1, I could swear, maybe I'm misremembering, that like the PlayStation 1 cost $150, but the games all still costed like $50. Mm-hmm. The new game still costed like $50. And then what happened was there was a trend where the console itself became way more expensive over time, but the games always like floated around this $50, $60 range for like 20 years, which is interesting and weird. So
yeah, look, I think they probably sell for more money,
right?
And then also less people.
I mean, just buy a game off Steam for like $5 when it's on sale because Steam is a massive monopoly. So
just make video games for rich people,
right?
$10,000 a game.
There you go. The Wooster for $20. Thanks so much, Wooster. Says, God forbid Americans stand up for themselves instead of being the world's bitch. The New Deal was based on industrializing the American manufacturing base. Unfair free trade was just a buzzword to disempower the middle class. That's right, Cambodia. Fuck you, Cambodia.
We don't need your diamonds.
We don't need your diamonds or your textiles. Okay. Eat shit, Cambodia. Eat shit. Whatever the name of that African country that gets $3 a day to live on, whose name I forget. Fuck you all. You suck.
They're taking advantage of us.
They're ripping us off, those fucking bastards. I know.
We don't need any of their bullshit.
Don't want their shit. Don't want their shitty diamonds anyway.
Why are they such bitches? Who cares? They don't need food. Fuck them.
They have their own food. Okay. God's Bar Tap for $5 says, check out Michael Every. He's a global strategist for Rabobank, who's been predicting U.S. move back to quasi-merchantless policy since 2016. Interesting. Well, there you go.
Is that another good book for me to read?
Maybe. Michael Every. Cameraman 502 for 2 hours says, there is no strategy. Trump just likes tariffs. I mean,
that seems true.
Yeah, I wouldn't.
That seems accurate.
Let's say I wouldn't make a bet. Okay, I don't feel confident to make a bet against that.
He likes being in the spotlight, and this is a way to ruffle some feathers and get some phone calls, right?
Right. That's true. Listen, I was thinking this. Every fucking world leader is going to be calling Donald Trump's phone for the next week. Okay, it's nonstop phone calls.
So crazy.
Lethal Strain for $5 says, to clarify, that was a joke. So I thank you. I understood the Lethal Strain, but it's actually Greenland, Mexico, and Canada. Oh, got me. That's why they weren't on the chart. There you go, JK. Makes sense. I mean, I know that's a joke because there's no way in hell Trump would want Mexico to be part of the U.S. All right, so.
Yeah.
Rhythmus for $2 says the 3 goals only conflict if you assume that every country will react to tariffs the same way. If different countries and companies react differently, then each goal can be contributed to on a case-by-case basis. Yeah, I mean, that could be the strategy is basically to just throw out the 3 different goals and then to just mix and match whatever goal you can get with whatever country does whatever it does. So, I mean, I guess that's a strategy. It's an interesting strategy. Maybe, maybe that way, maybe the genius, maybe that way you can claim victory no matter what. If the countries do what you want, you get to say reciprocal trading. Woo! If the country doesn't do what you want, you say bring it back manufacturing. Fuck you, Cambodia, and your 93%. We're going to bring back manufacturing from Cambodia.
You don't think Cambodia can open some sweatshops over here and make their cheap clothing? Come on.
Ooh, maybe they could.
What's going on? We need more sweatshops in America.
We do.
That's what we need.
Yeah. I want some of those textiles, baby. Sala for $2 says, I explained this before, but trade can help domestic manufacturing because importing cheaper inputs helps make it cheaper to build cheaper final products. Plus, him constantly pulling the rug is not good for certainty. Yes. Well, that was kind of going back to the whole car thing. That's why it's stupid to put tariffs on like bits and pieces of things that are going to be built in America. That doesn't make sense to me. That, like, even from Trump's perspective, that should all be exempt from the tariffs, right? Shouldn't be putting tariffs on parts of things that are going to end up being manufactured in America anyway.
Yeah, I wonder if they could do something where the final product is only tariffed, but that doesn't, how? Because at some point, the part is the final product for somebody, right? Everything is the
Right.
final product for somebody,
Right.
right? Yeah.
Fondue for $6 says, "Is Sammy still letting Trump cook? I'm kind of worried about the flames licking the ceiling." Sammy is in a perpetual state of always letting Trump cook infinitely. Okay. We could be
Oh
standing
no, that's not good.
standing in like the ruins of like Fallout, New Vegas, nuclear apocalypse, and she'd still be like, Sitch,
Let him cook.
let him cook. The apocalypse, she'd be like, Sitch, I told you the apocalypse is going to be fun. Okay. We're going to drive motorcycles and live on a boat and fly helicopters and shoot zombies. Okay. She has infinite grace.
Look, if we can
Bless her
shoot
heart.
some zombies,
Right.
maybe I'm down.
Right. Solid for 2 hours says, "What do you think about the DOJ seeking the death penalty against Mangione? Do you think there'll be a George Floyd style riot if he's convicted?" That's a good question.
If he's convicted, what the fuck? Well, you think he's going to get off? Of course he's going to be convicted.
Yeah.
There's no way in hell. The question is when he's convicted.
Well,
will
I guess
there be riots?
Well, no. I guess the question would be: doesn't the judge? I don't know how's it work in New York. I don't know if the judge or the jury has to be. It's different in every state. Whether it's the judge or the jury that makes a determination about the death penalty. Like they could say he's guilty, but not give him the death penalty, even if the prosecution's asking for it. So
right.
If he gets a death penalty, even if he gets convicted guilty, I mean, I think there'll be a little riot in New York.
A little
be like
riot.
a little
mostly
riot,
peaceful riot.
Mostly peaceful, yeah. I don't think it's going to be like a fraction of BLM, George Floyd around the country shit. Like not at all. I don't think so. So, in terms of whether they should, I say, yeah, fuck that guy. They should do the death penalty. I think if you just like fucking kill someone and everyone in the world knows you killed that person, and it's just like super cold blood, then you should get the death penalty. I don't have a problem.
Yeah, I think the death penalty is totally appropriate. There's like multiple
Right.
lines of evidence. It doesn't seem like we got this one wrong, right?
Yeah, I don't think anyone except the most
It's
like
on fucking video.
Yeah, I don't think only like the most copious of copers think that he's not the guy. So
Yeah.
or conspiracy theorists, I should say, really. Solid for 2 hours says protectionism could be justified by national security sometimes, but it should be recommended by the generals, not by industry heads or because the president thinks it's a good idea. Congress should take back tariff authority. So it's interesting because that's what Rand Paul was making a big stink about, wanting Congress to take back tariff authority. And he voted against this, and they have some Senate bill that is against all this. I don't think it's going to pass the House, so I don't think it matters. And even if it did, Trump would just veto it, so I don't think it matters. But his whole argument was, yes, this is all, Trump is doing this all illegally. He doesn't really or should not really have the authority to do any of this. So,
yeah. How do we get in this place where we're like, yeah, obviously all these companies are going to move overseas and
right.
We're just cool with that.
Electro for 6 months. Thanks so much. Of discipline equals freedom. It says, "Thank you, Sitch. I know that some of these people still buy even after complaining. I just want the people who complain to put their wallet where their mouth is." There you go. Thank you, Electro.
You want them to eat their wallet?
The wallet. The Rooster for $5 says, "Your joke about textiles coming to America being dumb, but we have a growing homeless, skillless population that needs employment." Oh my God. He's right. Well,
I mean,
listen, I like my idea better. Okay. My idea was the homeless drug addict fight arena, right?
Wow.
And you film everything. But maybe you're right, Rooster. Maybe it'd be more humane and smarter to have them, sew things.
Go into one of these tent cities and just pay them in drugs.
There you go. Listen, you could save so much money. You don't have to pay them in money. You pay them in drugs and fentanyl.
Pay them in fentanyl. We deal with the fentanyl problem at the same time.
Yes.
Get that shit off the streets. Yeah.
Okay, you know what? I take it back, Rooster. Me and Adam, we've and you, the three of us, we figured it out. I like this idea. You're right.
We do need, do we have a lot of low skill? This is the thing. Who keeps track of the labor statistics?
Well, this is all going to get replaced by robots in 20 years anyway. So that's why I'm saying get the robots. All this other shit doesn't matter because all these jobs not going to exist in 20 years.
Supposedly employment is super low right now, but
employment or unemployment?
unemployment.
Right. Lethal Strain for $2 says Mexico finally pays for the wall as U.S. taxpayers. Oh, that. Well, you know what? That makes sense. Okay, I take it back. Maybe Trump will want Mexico, though. He would keep them like like Puerto Rico. They wouldn't get the vote. Dr. Adam Refriended, Brigadier General for 27 months. Thank you so much. Says I still remember the maid outfit reveal promises. Do it, and I might come back as an S-class general. If not, only food can tempt me now. Listen, Dr. Adam Refriended, you know the price for the maid outfit face reveal. Okay. You know what it is. We all know what it is. It's $100,000. If you want to give me $100,000, I will do it. If not, then you're going to have to wait for Sammy to scrounge that money up. Okay. M8566 for $5 says Sammy be like Trump, let him cook. Sitch, do you know where you're sleeping tonight? There you go.
That.
There you go.
That's gender inequality right there.
There. Yeah.
That only goes one way.
Yeah.
It's the guy that's sleeping on the couch.
No, I think he's saying that. I'm not saying that. He's saying, quote, Sitch, do you know where you're sleeping tonight?
Yeah.
Like she's saying that. Yeah. So listen, Sammy talks tough, but she's a Tuttle cylinder, right? Okay.
That's good.
Yeah. Anyways, I guess we're not talking about the other story on Tuesday because I said, or do you still need to go?
We can. Yeah, we have time.
Okay. Well, then we'll talk about it now then.
I can go till 2. I looked up the unemployment rate and it's at 4.1% right now. So during the pandemic, how high do you think it got, right? We closed all the businesses. I guess was it higher? It just wasn't counted because we were paying people to be unemployed. What do you think it is? What do you think it topped out at? Don't look it up.
I'm not. I'm trying to open back my other window with my notes. You said, what do I think unemployment got as the highest?
Mm-hmm.
Didn't it get to like 9 or 10% or something?
14%.
Oh, wow. Wow.
I thought you would have guessed higher. Almost 15%. So, and during the Great Recession, got up to 10%. 10% unemployment.
Okay. If you want to bring the notes back up, you can go to. I guess you don't really need to look at it, but if you want.
Is this a big correction?
This is the correction.
Did we get something wrong?
I got something wrong.
No way. Impossible.
So this was on the story Tuesday. This was not about the gay hairdresser. This is about the father that got deported to El Salvador, who had a court order that was telling the U.S. government that it was illegal to actually deport him to El Salvador, and we did it anyway. Okay. Mm-hmm. So I said that the courts ruled that he was not a member of MS-13. That is not accurate. That is untrue. What actually happened was the police accused this guy of being an MS-13 gang member. He said, I'm not an MS-13 gang member. The police said, well, we have a confidential informant that says you're an MS-13 member. And then he said, well, can I cross-examine this guy? Or his lawyer said, can we cross-examine this guy? Can we do anything about it?
So we can put a hit out on him?
Right. Can we adjudicate any of this in court? Okay. So that actually never happened. It was never actually adjudicated in court. It was just the police made this claim that this confidential informant said. What people are pointing to, and what J.D. Vance pointed to himself, even though he wrongly said this guy was convicted as a gang member, which he wasn't, was on the bail hearing, once the police accused him of being an MS-13 gang member, when he was trying to get bail while he was requesting protection in America, the bail judge said, well, based on just the informant, that's enough to say that you're a bail risk because you could be part of MS-13, so we're not going to give you bail. Now,
right.
Now the evidentiary requirement to getting bail is way higher, or I should say it's way lower for the state to prove you shouldn't get bail than it is for the state to prove that you're guilty of a crime and should go to jail forever.
Yeah, flight risk is way high probability.
Right. And so what you had a bail judge said that it was, that the confidential informant was enough evidence to deny bail. It didn't say that a court in America adjudicated and ruled that they had found evidence that this guy was part of MS-13 and thus should go to jail. That never actually happened at all. So that's where the confusion sort of came from. So the court didn't say he wasn't MS-13, but a court never adjudicated and said that he was MS-13 in order to send him to jail. That didn't actually happen. So the answer to the question is, it's actually unknown whether he's really a part of this gang or not.
Right. He denies it.
He denies
they say
it.
He is.
The police claim he was. Now his lawyers claim, again, this is his lawyers, so you can take it as you take it. This would have to be adjudicated, obviously. This is what his lawyers claim, which is kind of interesting. They said, on April 24th, 2019, plaintiff Garcia appeared for his first hearing in immigration court. Through counsel, he moved for release on bond. According to the statute, blah, blah, blah. ICE opposed a change in custody status, arguing that Garcia presented a danger to the community because local police have supposedly, quote, verified that he's an active gang member. In support thereof, ICE offered the gang field interview sheet, which I don't believe anyone has published yet. They had the one for the gay barber, but I don't think they have for this guy. At least I haven't seen it. The gang field interview sheet explained that the only reason to believe plaintiff Garcia was a gang member was that he was wearing a Chicago Bulls hat and a hoodie, and that a confidential informant advised that he was an active member of MS-13. The gang informant sheet was entered in the database, blah, blah, blah. According to Department of Justice and Suffolk County District Attorney Office, the Western's MS-13 clique operates in Brentwood, Long Island in New York, a state that the plaintiff Garcia has never lived in, according to his lawyers. The attorney for Garcia subsequently made multiple attempts to obtain additional information from law enforcement concerning these allegations. The police indicated that it did not have any incident report related to this Home Depot episode at all, nor did the department have any incident reports containing his name. The other police department, on the other hand, confirmed that it did have an incident on the Home Depot incident, but the only three people were named, and Garcia was not one of them. Nor did it have any other incident reports with his name in its database. His attorney also contacted the police department's inspector general requesting to speak to the detective who authorized the gang reports, claiming that they had the informant that said this, but was informed that that detective has been suspended. A request to speak to other officers in the gang unit was declined. So according to Garcia's lawyers, they could never, ever get any information about any of this confidential informant or the gang sheet or anything like that. Which, if that's true, that makes the whole thing seem highly suspect. Super highly suspect.
The cop who talked to the informant is on discipline? He's
been suspended, yes.
Interesting.
And they haven't really backed up any of these claims. So now some people have said, I saw on X that were arguing this, they were saying, yes, it's true that the evidentiary requirement for bail is significantly, lower for the state to prove than to actually throw you in jail forever. But they're saying the evidentiary weight to deport someone is also significantly lower, which is true. But then you have to remember, we didn't deport him to his country. We sent him to jail or prison indefinitely in another country.
Yeah.
So in my mind, sending someone to jail, whether it be in or prison, I should say, because jail is what you do before you have had your claims adjudicated in court. If someone's sending you to prison forever, then the standard should have to be the same as whether they prove you're guilty in America or whether you're going to send them to a prison, in another fucking country. So,
has anyone talked to the confidential informant, or do they even know who it is?
No.
This is fucked up then.
It's super fucked up.
Maybe the cop just made up the confidential informant.
Who the fuck knows? As I said, their lawyers, the way that they talk about this thing is that they said that they got the four guys in separate rooms and they basically tried to get the other ones to rat the other guys out.
Yeah. So you think they know who the informant was?
If that's true, it sounds like they just got one of the guys to just finger point at him, and that was what they were basing it off of. That alone is obviously a ridiculous reason to send someone to prison forever.
Or all of them held tight. Nobody ratted on anybody, and the cops just made up an informant.
Maybe. Yeah, I don't know.
They went in and said, oh, the other guys ratted you out already. They believe their own hype.
To me, the idea of if someone comes in the country illegally and you want to deport them, sure. But if someone comes to the country illegally and you're like, they should go to jail forever, a max security prison forever with no due process, that sounds psycho to me. So another interesting thing that I found that I was reading, which is crazy, and it kind of directly aligns with something that you talk about, Adam, was this is what the court ruling was, where they talked about why they granted him protection in the first place. And they kind of looked over they listened to his story, and then he was able to provide evidence for his story. And it's something that's I think is very important to know because it perfectly explains why so many countries get stuck in poverty forever. It's a perfect explanation, which I don't
Crime
think people
causes
understand
poverty.
this. Yes, crime causes poverty. It shows you exactly why so many countries get stuck in poverty forever, which seems
Yep.
like you wouldn't really understand if you haven't lived it. So this is what happened. So Garcia, or sorry, the respondent is a 24-year-old native of El Salvador. This is Garcia. He was born in 1995 in Los Nogales neighborhood in San Salvador, El Salvador. Garcia testified that he fears returning to his country because the Barrio 8 gang, so I guess not MS-13, Barrio 18 gang was targeting him and threatening him with death because of his family's puposa business, which is a tortilla business.
Look at this.
The Garcia's mother, Cecilia, ran the business out of her home. Although the business had no formal storefront, everyone in town knew how to get their tortillas from them. Garcia's father, brother, and two sisters all helped run this family business. Garcia's job was to go to the grocery store to buy supplies needed for the tortillas, and then he and his brother would do deliveries 4 days a week to the people in the town that ordered from them.
Look at this.
At some point, Barrio 18 realized that his family was making money from their family business and began extorting Garcia's mother, Cecilia. They demanded a regular stipend of rent money or protection money from the business, beginning with a monthly payment and then requiring weekly payments. The gang threatened to harm Garcia, his older brother Caesar, and the family in general if their demands were not met. Alternatively, they told Cecilia that if she could not pay the extortion money, she could turn Caesar, Garcia's older brother, over to them to be part of their gang. The Abrego family paid the money on a regular basis whenever they could and hid Caesar from the gang. On one occasion, the gang came to the family's home and threatened to kill Caesar if the family did not pay the rent. The family responded by sending Caesar to the U.S. After Caesar left, the gang then started trying to recruit Garcia. They told Cecilia that she would not have to pay rent anymore if she just let him join the gang. The mother refused to let this happen. The gang then threatened to kill Garcia. When Garcia was around 12 years old, the gang came to the home again, telling Cecilia that they would take him because she wasn't paying money from the family business. Garcia's father prevented the gang from taking him that day by paying the gang all of the money that they wanted. During the days, the gang would watch Garcia when he went back and forth to school. The members of the gangs all had tattoos and always carried weapons. Eventually, the family had made enough money to move from Los Nogales to a different neighborhood. The different neighborhood was 10 minutes away by car. Shortly after the family moved, members of Barrio 18 went to the new neighborhood and let their fellow gang members know that the family had moved to the neighborhood. Barrio 18 members visited the house demanding rent money again from the tortilla business. They went to the house twice, threatening to kill and rape Garcia's two sisters and threatening Garcia. Garcia's parents were so fearful that they kept Garcia inside the home as much as possible. Finally, the family decided they had to close their own successful business and moved to another area, which was another 15 minutes away from the last residence. However, even at this new location, the family kept Garcia indoors most of the time because of continual threats on his life. After 4 months of living in fear, his parents sent him to the United States. Even though the respondent's father, Garcia's father, was a former policeman, the family never reported anything to the police regarding the gang extorting the family business. The gang members had threatened Cecilia, telling her that if she ever reported anything to the police, they would kill the entire family. The family believed them because they are well aware of the rampant corruption in the police in El Salvador, and they believed that if they reported anything to the police would do nothing. At present, the family has now shut down their business entirely. Barrio 18 continues to harass and threaten Garcia's two sisters and parents in Guatemala. Additionally, they have targeted a brother-in-law who now lives with the family. And then the court said, in this instance of the matter, Garcia has provided credible responses to the questions asked. His testimony was internally consistent, externally consistent with his asylum application. Other documents appeared free of embellishment. Further, he provided substantial documentation buttressing his claims, including in this evidence were several affidavits from family members that described the family's tortilla business and threats by Barrio 18 to the various family members, in particular to Garcia over the years. The court finds Garcia's credible. This finding is applicable to his other two claims as well, and blah, blah, blah. That's why they give him protection.
This is why fucking America rules, because these people, these motivated people, these self-starters, these business-minded people, they move to America because they can't fucking start a business where they live because it turns them into a target.
Yeah, that was what was so crazy to me reading that is, I mean, beyond obviously the effect on this guy's life, but just it's like the perfect example of why these countries get stuck in poverty forever. You're so
Yep.
right. As soon as somebody comes up with some business to try to make money for themselves and their family, a criminal gang comes in and just beats them fucking back down.
And to improve the fucking place for everyone. Like everyone,
Yes.
more tortillas, they're accumulating money. Next thing you know, they're fixing up the neighborhood.
Right.
None of that
right.
can happen because you got
Yep.
these fucking thugs running around, these losers who are like, oh, we're just going to extort money from you.
Yep. And that, I mean,
Yeah.
that's a perfect example of crime causing poverty and how you just need to. And I mean, that's why I'm not, in El Salvador, I'm not even opposed to the president of El Salvador rounding up all the fucking gangbangers, if they're actually gangbangers,
Yeah,
and throwing
throw
them
them all
in
in
fucking
jail.
Do it.
Exactly.
100%.
Yes.
Like
what
that's
we
what
need
you
is
have to do.
mass
Right.
incarceration.
Yes.
You should
Yes.
love mass incarceration.
Right.
When these
Right.
bleeding heart leftists come in and are like, oh my God, look, he just needed money because he's being oppressed by the rich
Yeah, fuck
people.
that.
Yeah,
Fuck that shit.
fuck
Right.
that.
No.
These guys are the oppressors.
Yeah. But you just got to make sure that you're not putting innocent people in jail forever. Okay. That's the stipulation, right?
Oh, yeah.
So,
Oh, yeah, with the mass incarceration. Get the right
Right.
guy.
yeah, you just got to make sure you get the right guy, they can actually defend themselves. So,
It's a sad story all around, huh?
right.
Sad
So,
story all around. He's got to deal with it in El Salvador, and he's got to turn around and deal with it. Well, I guess he's back in El Salvador now, right?
Yeah, well, he's not even in El Salvador. He's in jail with gang members in El Salvador. He's not even with his family. So,
So
he didn't get
basically-
deported. He went to jail.
So he's joined the gang now because the only way he can survive is by joining the gang. So
Well, there you go. I guess they finally got him after all. Isn't that ironic?
look, that seemed like a huge setup to me too. Like, give us your son to join the gang. They're gonna fucking off him in the next whatever they do, and then they're gonna go right back to the family.
Well, I don't know,
He's
because
like
I
the
wonder.
only protection between them and the family.
I wonder when I read that if that's also. I mean, that's how I'm sure that's how a lot of these gangs just continue growing their ranks indefinitely.
They can, but obviously, if
Oh.
he's a source of income,
Right.
like they're gonna say, "Yeah, you got to continue to shake down your own family." How comfortable are you going to be shaking down your own family, Sitch? Because you're
Not
now a
great.
member of the gang.
Right.
Just fucking hell on earth. Hell on earth. God, we are so lucky to have the situation we have in America. And people constantly just complain about it.
Electro for $2 says, I believe you guys missed my $20 super chat. Oh, I'm sorry about that. Make sure.
Yeah,
I certainly
horrifying.
did. What a
Damn
what a
it.
shithead I am. Here we go. Electro for $20. Thank you. Sorry about that. The left said Trump would become an authoritarian. I guess they would not have expected him to go the planned economy route. That's true.
Oh,
That is
yeah.
true.
Yeah, it works out. Unfortunately, Trump thinks he's a fucking genius. So he's like,
Right.
of course I can work this. I'm doing a deal here, a deal there.
Mm-hmm.
I'm doing a deal with everyone.
Right.
It's a deal. It's a good deal. This is a deal. It's so weird. So weird.
Metalworks 411.90 for $5 says video games are barely affected by tariffs. Also, Nintendo never puts their games on sale, makes it very difficult to buy their older titles. So fuck them. Yeah, I think if it comes to if people are complaining about their older titles not being very super expensive or whatever, I don't care. I agree with that complaint. I just don't agree with the new games complaint. But if it's about the old games and emulating all that stuff, I agree. That's well, I don't know. Like on one hand, I think they overprice them. But on the other hand, I think they kind of overprice them to make up for the fact that I think a lot of the games they sell are loss leaders, I think, to some extent. So I don't know. It's complicated. You do whatever you want. I
don't
care
know
either
anything
way.
about the game industry, or
Right.
I don't know about the titles and that kind of stuff. So
Right.
you play a lot more games than me. So
I'm not going to buy a Switch 2, so it doesn't matter to me. But
a Switch,
the Switch 2 is coming out. That's what they're talking about.
is that like a handheld game?
It's the Nintendo system.
Oh, okay.
It can become handheld.
Is it going to be great? It's a console.
It's a console, but it's also
Switch
handheld. It's
2.
both.
Does it have VR?
It does not have VR.
What?
I think Nintendo's
VR is the only thing that kind of interests me because I mean it's like a whole different experience, right?
I think Nintendo is scared of VR ever since their VR headset was like a total fucking disaster. So
this is like a handheld thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's both. It's handheld or you hook it up to your TV.
I like the first PSP back in the day.
I had a PSP.
I still have it. Yeah.
Yeah, it was kind of shitty, but you know.
What are you gonna do?
What are you gonna
It's
do,
all they give you.
That's true. That or the Game Boy back in those days. Now you got the Switch. These kids are so, or you got this. They have the whatever it's called, the Steam version, which basically lets you play fucking just any computer game handheld, which is pretty crazy. So
this doesn't look fun.
Doesn't look fun. You don't want to play Mario Kart 374
not
or
really.
Donkey Kong, whatever.
Not really.
Look at this guy. What a fucking hater.
Not really.
I
mean, I like first-person shooters. It's like amazing now.
This guy only plays first person shooters. This is great.
You get like a mech suit.
Smash Brothers is good on the original Switch. So were both Zelda games were really great on Switch. So
you get in your car, you run over things. Mario Kart, I mean, there's not even any blood.
No. You get to throw turtle shells at people, though.
Mario Kart's like for little
This is
kids.
why when we went to Universal,
I know. I was thinking
I did better on the Mario Kart ride than you.
I got all my turtles.
I had skills, okay, from all my years of playing Mario Kart that I could hit things with the turtle shells. Right?
I thought
you just wasted them all.
I thought the turtle shells were like infinite supply, and I was like, "Holy shit! I ran out of turtle shells."
So if the Mario Kart ride in California, which I believe they're going to build in Orlando this summer or going to open this summer, it's cool. It's like you sit in a little Mario Kart and then you get a little headset that has augmented reality on it.
Yeah.
And you can see like the drivers and everything. And you're supposed to shoot the Koopas with the turtle shells. And Adam thought he had infinite turtle shells. So he's just going, beep, beep. I was like, no, we have limited shells. He's like, no.
Yeah. I ran out of turtle shells.
You fool.
I was sitting there.
Anyway,
it's doing nothing.
It was a fun ride.
Would have been more fun if I won.
Flamenco TV. Hey, what's up, Flamenco? For 5 months says, just saying, if the Switch 2 comes out with a hardware exploit like the first Switches did, I will buy a Switch 2 LMAO. Well, there you go. There you go.
Do it up.
Anyways.
All right. Great
Thank
show.
you all for
Very
coming.
Informative. I can't wait to figure out where the tariffs go.
We're going to see. We're going to see if we're all doomed or if Trump is a 10D genius. Okay.
Right. What happens tomorrow? Is the market up or down?
It's going to be down, obviously, but
down more?
Of course.
Nah, come on.
You think it's going? You think this is it?
Are you familiar with the dead cat bounce?
No.
I think there'll probably be. Well, look, if it's down significantly like this tomorrow, oh man, Trump's going to be crying uncle.
There you go.
It's hard, see you guys. It's hard for me to imagine it's going to be down tomorrow, but. Oh, you're trying to end the show?
Okay. Sunday. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Kicked your ass in Mario Kart, bitch.
That better not